Are we live up in this thing or what? What's going on, family? Come on, smash up the likes, smash up the likes. We are waiting for the Honorable Judge Joe Brown to appear in a minute. So we're going to keep things rolling. Of course, I am your host, the host with the most, G Rich, aka G-Boo2786. If you're watching via Rumble, X, or YouTube, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're trying to get Judge Joe Brown as we speak. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, just sit back, chillax. We're going to be good. Of course, there's a lot to talk about. I want to talk about something and show everybody this video. Of course, what we're going to be discussing is Trump's appearance at the National Association of Black Journalists in Chicago. And not coincidentally enough, Chicago is home to the DNC this year. So, not surprisingly, they have the NABJ conference forum here, and it was a slobber knocker, to say the least, as good old JR would say, because they were going back and forth. And I have a lot of things to address, especially some questions I have about the panel, some stuff I've learned. And just even looking at this panel, I have I had a very important concern that just jumped out of my mind. So we're going to talk about that. I'm trying to get to see where the judge is, but you all sit tight, relax, and enjoy the rest of the show. But first, ladies and gentlemen, let's cut and do our commercials right now. Wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today. But if you're looking for some opportunities, particular advertisement opportunities, then look no further at the link at the bottom to my email address. You can hit me up for advertisement opportunities. We are supporting and promoting your businesses here on this channel. You can also, if you would like to donate and subscribe to our Patreon, a link is at the bottom as well. So you have multiple ways in which you can advertise with the platform by emailing me when we go on do our live stream. You also have access to premium content, those that want to see premium content that you will not find here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I am suspended probably by now. You guys can check out the Patreon at link at the bottom. But advertisement opportunities, definitely email me, gavin.grich1@gmail.com for rates. And for the Patreon, it is the same as the YouTube channel. It is channel GBoot2786. All right, I'll holla. Peace. I am a real American. Fight for the rights of every man. I am a real American. Fight for what's right. Fight for your life. That's the only reference to Hulk Hogan I'll be tonight. To hell with that bald-headed bastard. What's going on, racist bastard? What's going on, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome to another exciting edition of Random Topics. Thank you if you're watching via X on YouTube or Rumble. You are dealing with the hottest live stream in the cosmos of social media and new black media at that, ladies and gentlemen. And so I'm flying solo tonight. We're waiting on the judge. As you know, our brother Shawn James usually is a guest, but he said he wasn't feeling that well. So we wish him the best. If he's watching, I'm sure he is, as tuning in. Trying to see if I can get the judge in a little bit. And mainly what we're going to be talking about tonight, guys, of course, you saw, if anything, the forum out in Chicago with Trump and the National Association of Black Journalists with that group. And we're going to go in and discuss that. But I'm waiting for Judge Joe Brown to come on in on him. But I noticed, and I wanted to point out to everybody, I wanted you to all notice as soon as you saw this panel, I knew the direction. Hold on a second. If you look at this video, we know already the direction. I can tell by looking at this panel. Now, what is the biggest takeaway you can see with this panel of guests of with Donald Trump, the former president, and you have three journalists, three ladies. One is this one right here. That's Harris Faulkner from Fox, the one in pink. The one in black, I'm not familiar with. I think her name, and I want to make sure I have it correctly, is Kadia Goba. And she's with Semaphore. I haven't heard of that one before. And on the left in blue is none other than Rachel Scott. Now, some things you should know about Rachel Scott. I just went to her Instagram. I went to an Instagram page. I just clicked up and I wanted to look at something. And this is the Instagram page for Black Greek Lifestyle. So hold on. This is Rachel Scott. She's an ABC News correspondent. And look who her sorority is. Alpha Kappa Alpha, which is the same sorority of one Kamala Harris. Of course, the biggest takeaway that I looked at with the panel is that you would think, and I have no problem with sisters being on the panel, being journalists and asking questions, but was there not one man that they couldn't find, a la Tavis Smiley? I'd even say Ed Gordon. Roly-poly, he could say that he was in the audience. That's a damn lie. I'm going to get to him a little bit later. I'm going to wait for Judge to come in. We're going to talk about that because Roly was shouting stuff out. And I'm just wondering, there are no black men in which they can ask questions, no black journalists. So it told me every way that direction that this was going to go in. Tariq Nasheed, shout out to him, who is a lifetime member of the NABJ, as is Roland Martin and a host of others. Soledad O'Brien, I saw on there. If you go to their website, there is a host of of male journalists that they could have gotten on there. You're telling me they couldn't find one black male journalist to ask Trump questions? I'm not, and it could have been one man, one black man, and two black women. But all women. And we know Harris Faulkner, yes, she's with Fox News. Of course, you have, now I don't know about the sister in the middle, but Rachel Scott, of course, she's with ABC. And look, most mainstream media nowadays, they tend to lean to the far left. But Rachel Scott is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Now, I have a lot of colleagues and friends who are in the boule. I know judges that are alphas and attorneys that are omegas, kappas. I know judges that are sigmas. And I'm not going to say too much because I got some cases in front of the mugs. And I'm not trying to lose, but I say the wrong thing. What's going on, Brother Bernard? I'm going to call a judge to see where the judge is at. I don't know where if he's coming in. He usually comes in late and is delayed. I think he's shooting off, going at some sissified little punks that are on his lawn. So he's going to get my 9mm and pluck all these sissified little asses off one by one, like it's the duck hunting game from Nintendo. Oh, and we got to talk about the judge and that interview he's done. I'm gonna ask Judge about the interview he did recently. I think it was with it wasn't All Around the Association, but it was it the Art? Someone knows who it is. The Art of Dialogue. The Art of Dialogue did interview with Judge Joe Brown that has gone viral, and the Breakfast Club has talked about it. But I'm going to get to Judge Joe Brown in a second, but I want to address something else as it relates to that. You see, I got after I did my show Tuesday night, I got a text message from a very close friend. You could say he's family, a family member of mine. And he texted me because he was complaining about the coverage I was giving. And he had something to say. He asked me, Gavin, I think you need to be a little more balanced with your interview. I need to be more balanced because we got a lot at stake. Stuff for our women and so forth. You're not attacking the Republicans like you're coming at the Democrats. And you know that they're not good for us. Well, I don't think the Democrats are good for us either, brother. And I want to address that. And I just want to say, if you find that my coverage is biased or slanted in any way, I suggested to him, I said, you go to Joy Reid, you go to CNN, you go to ABC, watch Rachel Scott and George Stephanopoulos, go to MSNBC, go to CBS, and you can watch them talk and slant everything because they do it, and you know they do it in favor of the Democratic Party. They are not the side of might and right. And the Republicans haven't been either. But I can say something, though. The reason why, I guess if you say I'm slanted and I'll admit, yes, most of my coverage has been on Democratic candidates. And the reason why that is because, as you all know, Black people are voting for Democrats, have always voted for Democrats in block. And it started to change around the 1930s. If you remember, well, nobody remembers obviously here, but how Black people basically started voting Democrat came about from two people, FDR, and you could say JFK or Lyndon Baines Johnson. Now, that was because FDR had something called the New Deal. And the New Deal was a series of programs and public works projects and financial reforms. You know, we came out the Great Depression. The United States was in a Great Depression from the late 1920s on to the early 30s. And so FDR decided to create a program. Yes, thank you for correcting my name because you called me Savin. Of course. No, I'm just joking about that. Let me just say this. I know I've actually known all of these judges and personally, they're very honest men. So I was just teasing when I made that joke. I don't think they would determine that on a sorority. But let me just say, okay, even with that, I have a lot of lawyers. A lot of lawyers in my profession, colleagues, are members of these fraternities and sororities. My brother's an alpha. My sister-in-law just did the grad chapter for the Deltas. Now, I'll say this much. When I was on campus at Southern, and I saw a lot of these fraternities, and look, I came from St. Aug. St. Aug here in New Orleans is very much like a fraternity in and of itself. Did I feel like going back into another fraternity, paying $3,000 something and getting my ass whipped? Not really. After I left one ass whipping, I didn't want to go to another. And I get paid for it. I'm not a boxer. Getting paddled and hazed, that wasn't my thing. I just wasn't feeling it. And I saw a lot of the fighters, I say fighters, excuse me, the pledges and so forth. I would see them get into, well, I will say this. I saw some alphas fighting kappas and so forth on the yard, people getting suspended, fights starting, You be in the dance club trying to get on a girl, and then all of a sudden, the alphas who are there start doing their line dance, or the omegas start doing their dance, and the kappas, the AKs, the deltas. I just wasn't into it. That's just me. It didn't. It didn't float my boat, and I mean that, man. As Sammy Davis would say, I mean that. But it just wasn't my thing. And let me say this: as far as speaking of fraternities and sororities, because they say that Kamala Harris is a member of the AKAs, which she is. I have no doubt in that. She went to Howard. As Brother Dwan B even pointed out in his broadcast, black people have been going to, white people actually have been going to HBCUs and pledging those fraternities and sororities. That doesn't make them black. Rachel Dolezal went to Howard. Mike Foster, the governor of Louisiana, went to my alma mater, my law school, in Southern University Law Center. Southern University Law Center, which is a historically black college and university, they have almost 45% of white students and alumni. And you know why that is? It's because Southern, as great as a law school as it is, it's also financially affordable for a lot of the white students that can't get into LSU. You're talking about tuition at Southern that's probably about, let's just say, roundabout total for the next 3 years is about $70,000 for 3 years. Versus you go to Tulane or LSU, let's just say LSU, it's $120,000. You're gonna save money if you go to Southern. Some of the HBCUs actually are predominantly one HBCU, Dr. Umar, and I don't quote Dr. Umar that often, but Umar pointed out how one HBCU actually is predominantly white. West Virginia State has a 72% white population and less than 9% black. Oh, I gotta play my music. So there have always had HBCUs. You know, whites have always attended HBCUs, and in fact, most of your HBCUs were created and named after whites. Howard is named after Howard University. Is named was named after a white man. A lot of that started because of the white Union soldiers. Yeah, the namesake for Howard University is Oliver Otis Howard. I want y'all to put that here. So there have always been black. There's always been white students at HBCUs. But all right. So I wanted to bring that up, but I got a lot I'm going to get into. But nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, if he's trying to see. All rise. The Honorable Judge Joe Brown, now presiding in this courtroom. All ye draw near, and ye shall be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, our special guest has arrived. Please welcome the Honorable Judge Joe Brown. Judge.
Judge is in the house. Good morning, Counselor. Good afternoon, Counselor. Good day, Counselor. Whatever time we're doing this, you can't tell.
All that good stuff. Good evening. How you doing?
All right.
Judge, you want to, how's the sauce doing? I see you got
it's
your...
doing great. We have exceeded our expectations. We're about 7 years ahead of our schedule. We've got sauce, hot, mild. We've got seasoning, hot, mild. We've got link, smoked, raw, hot and mild. That's chicken, beef, and this vegan stuff that's beyond meat. We're also collaborating with a distillery for whiskey, and now they've been sending me sample wines from a vineyard that we're supposed to be working with. So yeah,
good.
Get outside party, get you some Q, and wash it down with whatever appeals to you.
Yeah. You know, we're trying to get, I got to talk with you because I'm still working trying to
Your
get my
Cajun stuff.
my Creole seasoning,
Yeah.
actually. Creole
Creole.
seasoning. And
Yeah.
I had sent you some supplies earlier, but I got to get more. I'm trying to get it in stores, which has been like if you're trying to get it with like Walmart and so forth, it's difficult, but you got to know the right people. And
We got ours in Amazon, which is interesting because it's a lot cheaper going through Amazon than through our website. Website, we're getting killed by the shipping cost. But if you go through Amazon and you have Amazon Prime, it's free and you usually get it within 2 days.
right. That's good. Judge, let's get started. You know, I want to talk with you about a few things. One of the things before we get into what happened with Donald Trump, I gotta ask you this question uh, about the Olympics and the opening ceremony, and also what happened. I don't know if you watched the story about the boxer from Algeria fighting the Italian woman. What happened? Apparently, they're stating, and I'll just get started. Uh, this young lady, female boxer whose name, uh, the Italian boxer, her name is Carini, if I'm not mistaken, and she was fighting an Algerian boxer by the name of Iman Khalif. Now, Khalif has always claimed, according to the reports, that she is a female. However, it's my understanding, and the questions have been, is that she was born with an XY chromosome. And controversy erupted because at the Olympics, this happened, I think, earlier yesterday. So I don't know if you saw this, but this is just the first 14 seconds. So one right hand. Straight right hand from. And Carini gives up. She gives up the fight after, I don't want a copyright strike, but she gives up the fight after one punch. And of course, she complained and cried because she was stating that uh, she never felt power like this and so forth. Now, this one, I have to say, Iman Khalif has actually been fighting as a woman for all her career, and she was 9-5 in the record. Now, she was banned. I use the term. I'm just saying she because that's what that is. Now, this person looks like a male, but
So
she's
he,
always fought as a female.
he.
Well, she was born with according to what I've read, she was born with an XY chromosome, but supposedly she doesn't have the male parts when he was born with it. So she identified as, so since as a baby or as a kid, she's always been a girl. That's what
Well,
she's saying.
they
Supposedly.
had that problem way back in the 60s and 70s. They had some Russians that had XXY, and they just banned them from competition.
Well, she didn't get banned, and a lot of people have
I
been
know that.
charming.
The emphasis is different. It's like, okay, she wants to compete. It, whatever it is, wants to compete now. So to be fair to it, you let it compete. It used to be there was an event. So to keep the event fair, you had rules. And if you didn't comply with the rules, you couldn't deal with it. It's kind of like, uh, are you a welterweight, middleweight, flyweight, lightweight, heavyweight, super heavyweight? What are you? You have to fight in your class. And the deal is okay, let's say somebody wanted to be a boxer, but they were blind. They couldn't fight. Let's say somebody wanted to be a boxer and they were extremely nearsighted. They'd gotten corrected with, let's say, LASIK surgery, but they still have elongated eyeballs. That means that they're subject to retinal detachment more readily than others. You wouldn't allow that person to fight either.
That happened to Sugar Ray Leonard. He had to
Yeah, I
retire because
talked
his
to
vision.
him. So it's what you get.
And that's the fighter she was fighting, the Italian boxer, who's looks like a fine woman from this picture. But
Well, she looked kind of big. Was she in class?
yeah, that's the female. Yeah.
I mean,
Now,
she wasn't over the weight limit. She looked a lot bigger than the other fighter.
Yeah, well, the other fighter, look, this is the fighter who won,
Yeah, the non-Italian.
the Algerian who they say is had testosterone. Now, in fairness, Judge, I want to point out a couple of things. The IBA, I think, did the rules at one time for the Olympics committees, but they broke off, and so the IOC, who that has their own set of rules, they said she qualified. But I think in the IBA, when she was trying to go for the gold belts last year, she got disqualified because she had XY chromosomes in there, and they thought there was a high level uh, of testosterone.
Well, I mean, you can't do everything you'd like to do in life. There are rules.
There's a welterweight. Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at it. You can't run for president if you're not born on American soil. You can't fly an airplane if you can't get corrected past 20/40 vision.
Right.
You can't drive a car if your eyesight is too poor.
Right.
So, I mean, that's why we have rules. We can't direct everything because somebody's feelings are hurt.
Yeah. Angela Carini said, "quote I have never been so hit hard in my life. Never been hit so hard in my life. I can imagine." And that's the punch there. And then they had Donald Trump, not just Donald Trump, Elon Musk, uh, J.K. Rowling, who's the author of the Harry Potter series. She even commented on it. Yeah, I thought you probably, she said, and I'm going to go to J.K. Rowling's tweet. She said, "Could any picture sum up our new men's rights movement better? The smirk of a male who knows he's protected by a misogynist sporting establishment, enjoying the distress of a woman he just punched in the head and whose life's ambition he just shattered." And people have commented that this person is not trans identity. She is an intersex trans or man, and they're saying that Karini is just a sore loser.
Well, the author of the Harry Potter series uh, got into a position where she gave Hollywood their comeuppance because they don't like her posture on such things. So she's a traditional person. And there are a lot of people who are against that. But we've got this thing going on that you saw at the openings for these games, that ceremony they had.
Oh
That's
yeah,
where they're going. They're trying to impose this cult on this country through its acolytes and disciples, its converts, its proselytizers, and such like. And it's a cult. And they're trying to spread it around the world forcibly and give no one the opportunity to gainsay it. So it's a problem. You see the reaction here. And the problem is that one side is claiming all of this support, and the other one saying, "Hey, it's blue Budweiser can." Budweiser destroyed themselves with that freak in the blue panties and bra in the bubble bath. So, are you talking about humanity and what humanity has set up as its rules of engagement in terms of man-woman relationship? Or are you going to try something new just because you want it to happen and you want to make sure somebody's feelings are not hurt? Well, we still have war, so I would assure you that a lot of people's feelings get hurt in wars. We
yeah,
still have economic competition between nations and individuals, and I'm sure somebody's feelings get hurt. We've got this thing right now. We're on YouTube and anything else. We can't say what has been permissible for the entirety of this country's history under the First Amendment because somebody's feelings are hurt.
right.
See, where are we going with this? Are we going to remain people who can maintain their status at the top of the food chain? What happens if ET lands and says, "Take me to your leader," and I do not arrive
In peace. Yeah,
in peace? You know,
yeah. And I about that opening, even when I looked at it, not just the Last Supper thing they mocked, but they were also the guy behind the little girl that was there. I don't know if you. I didn't want to look, but people pointed out his baguettes were out. So
Yeah,
they had that, and they didn't censor it. And that was actually to me, the most disturbing.
yeah, it's pedophilia,
Yeah,
symbolic and actual.
right.
So that's okay. And by the way, they got upset with this guy who is a surfer. He had a Christian symbol on his surfboard, and they told him he had to remove it or use another board. He couldn't use that. What do you call it? But I saw rainbow, didn't you?
Oh, most definitely.
So
And
you can have the rainbow cult symbol, but you can't have anybody else's.
yeah,
Where'd they come from? That looks like the Roman Catholic Church way back at the beginning of the Dark Ages, and that looks like jihad, and that looks like Exodus out of Egypt with ethnic cleansing on the way back to Israel with Moses and the boys. And let's see, that looks suspiciously like Torquemada burning heretics at the stake. That looks like the multiple wars of religion and Protestant Reformation, that kind of thing that went on until lately. It's kind of also like what you get with the Nazis, the Untermensch, the uh, subhuman categories that weren't favored, the way they put it. So you get treated differently depending upon your perceived status. So right now, if you're non-rainbow, you don't have as many rights as the rainbow had. And hey, I thought, didn't they outlaw giving one group an advantage based on an ethnic circumstance with what happened last year with affirmative
affirmative
action?
action. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you get around that? And by the way, didn't they say you couldn't teach religion in a public school, or you can't have the religious symbols,
Can't have prayers in
pushing
public.
religion in public buildings, but you have the rainbow plastered all over the school hallways and up and down government structures? What happened? Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the direction that we're going in, and with this country, and we're seeing that. But people, I think, are slowly responding. And I want to ask you because you've gone. I want to talk to you about this. You've gone viral, Judge, which is not a surprise. You always go viral, and you were on the Art of Dialogue doing an interview about Kamala Harris that went viral. And I wanted to actually, if I could get away with it, I can't play the whole thing. I won't show the video, but I'm trying to see if I could play the audio. The Breakfast Club responded to your Art of Dialogue interview, and I don't
Breakfast
know.
Club's bunch of crap. And, let me say this before we even get into it. Dick Gregory and I used to talk on the phone before he passed away, right?
Right.
He was on the Breakfast Club, and he called me up one day just absolutely livid, saying, I did not realize until somebody pointed out to me that they had that rainbow flag showing over one of my shoulders, and it was like I was endorsing it. Oh, hell no. See, that's what they're doing. That's the Breakfast Club. And every time I think of the Breakfast Club, I think of that video that they had out for a while where what's the Charlemagne the God, two people get out of a car on the sidewalk and he takes off and runs down the block to get away. I always laughed at that. And then the idea of somebody naming himself after Charles the Great, who was supposed to be 7 feet 1 inches tall, who was a psychopath. Adolf Hitler early on killed notoriously 120,000 of his subjects because they cremated their dead rather than burying them. So he had 11 wives in his palace, and he's supposed to be a good Christian. Real interesting guy. Killed a lot of people.
Right. Well, I have more to say about Charlemagne and the Breakfast Club, but yeah, I stopped listening to them a while back, especially when they had Angela Yee and they brought Malik Yoba on talk and some trannies about who's a woman and what's a man and so forth. And the only woman that was on the panel was Angela Yee. But I digress. I want to just play this right
Well,
quick.
I interviewed Malik Yoba. I call him Milk Yogurt.
I remember that.
He hung up because we got on him. I just said, wait a minute. You knew he had a penis, but you're calling him a woman, so you had sex with something that had a penis. That makes you gay. No, I'm not gay. I said, well, what in the devil do you call it? Well, it identified as a woman. So it said a couple of words and that made it okay. Oh, I get you. All right. And then he hung up, you know. He didn't want to respond to that.
Yeah.
He had phone trouble.
He had phone trouble and didn't call back.
And then for a few weeks later, this 13, 14-year-old said child who identified as a child prostitute, male child prostitute in New York, claimed that allegedly he had had sex with him over a continuous basis when they were doing that television production, along with some other people on the cast. Looks like Epstein stuff to me.
Well, I remember when he was actually got into it with the griot because they said it looks bad for you, and he told them, we sat here for 4 hours. We went over the questions, and he said I want the tapes. I gotta find that. But Judge, did you hear what I don't know if you heard what the Breakfast Club had to say about your interview on the Art of Dialogue, and I'm gonna play a little bit of it. But hey, fair use, by the way. So I sped it up, but I want y'all to listen. So I'm not gonna play the video, but if you can hear the audio.
Yeah. Definitely. And another story, social media reacts to Judge Joe Brown's hating ass. He sat and did an interview with the Art of Dialogue, and when they asked him his thoughts on Kamala Harris, he did not hold back. This is what he said.
How you feel about her?
She's a piece of shit. In California, she lacked professional competence, and she worked on it by hiking up her hemline when she needed influence rather than researching. My thing about it is if I'm crude about it, in this city years ago, I used to represent a whole bunch of pimps and hoes, and I know a hoe when I see one. I don't care, women, you do what you want to do if you want to have recreational sex, but when you do the casting couch or anything else for professional purposes to get paid or advance, you a hoe. And she's old hoe. Jesus Christ.
So that's what you said. Now here's what their response is. And the title of it says 50 Cent. It says 50 Cent speaks on Diddy beef. Judge Joe Brown old ass slams Kamala Harris. That's how they phrased it. So I'm gonna finish.
Who keeps putting these balloons up when I'm on? I don't care whose show it is. What is this? You see that?
Where?
The balloons keep floating up every time I get on. I don't care whose show, somewhere. And
I don't see anything.
You don't, but I see balloons coming up.
That might be you. That's probably YouTube.
Yeah, I mean the last 6 shows I've been on, it's done that. Anyway, yeah. I thought maybe you could see it.
I don't see it, but let me play this is what DJ Envy, Charlemagne, and Jess Hilarious, that's her name, had to say.
Jess
Hilarious. I hate old miserable age. Jesus. It's like, what? You could have told us you didn't like her without all of this.
Yeah, it'd be your own people. Damn it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say, though, I agree with everything that y'all just said, but I like to hear some of that old verbiage. You're hiking up your hemline. I ain't never heard that one. Hiking up your hemline?
Yeah,
I never heard that one.
Sound like an old ass cowboy. You get on somebody's nerves.
Yeah, oh, Lord.
Anyway, a lot of people disagree with him. I mean, they slandered him online. I mean, I'm not really worried about that, but it's just like, yo, certain things, like you said, to be your own people. Like some things you just don't have to say. You can say, yo, I don't feel no way, but I don't like her.
I just don't like her. We don't get along. She's not my cup of tea. But damn, to go that far, you're hiking up your hemline and laying on the couch.
People be saying things that you can't even prove. Did she sleep with you and you gave her
absolutely
like, where's this coming from? Like,
that's what it sounds like. She didn't give him none.
Yeah, it's just like certain things you don't even give no energy, man.
He old and retired. He got mad because he got fired from being a TV judge. It just is what it is. And he be getting drunk all day. Anyway,
I get fired. I quit.
No, because I'm mad about that. Don't play with
$8 million. So anyway,
well, that's
funny.
That's what Alexis Hilarious had to say.
Yeah, so, is that all of it?
I think so. Yeah.
You just threw a bunch of stuff on him. He's an old alcoholic. He just be getting drunk all day. That's all he do.
He got fired. He ain't got nothing else to do. He hiking up with him. He ain't looking for the hemlines to hike up.
Right. All right. Anyway, Jonathan Major reacts to
They are made more money than they are, and I dated prettier women for the ones that like women. So anyway, that seems to be a rarity with them. Probably better looking women than the woman did, since she seems to be the one that likes women. That's her deal, and she ain't my type, so she can go laugh out the other side of her head. But bottom line is this: we ain't dealing with a black person. See, she doesn't have a single black ancestor. Her daddy says, I'm not black. I'm Caucasian. I'm Caucasian Irish, and I'm Caucasian Tamil Brahmin Hindu. So how do you get black out of that? The mama identifies as Caucasian. She's Indian. She's dark and swarthy. They're like that. They're not African based, unless you count back 95,000 years ago when everybody came up out of Africa. So everybody on the planet Earth is black in that case, or African. So where did she get to be a homegirl? She grew up in Canada. At least the, what do you call them? The yearbook that she posted when she was out in California, it says in there, kindergarten through 12th grade. So when she get experience in United States, she lied about it with Biden saying she had to get bused, but she's claiming she was in Canadian public school at the time. She claims she got bused in San Francisco. She went to Howard, but then again, I'm aware of people who wrote books about it who are Indians who cut their hair close and got financial aid to go to black colleges or historical black colleges and universities such as Fisk and Meharry in Nashville. So what do we have here? And she's an AKA? Well, my mother was an AKA. I have it behind the wall now, so I don't have anything against AKA, but she's lying about being the first black Greek to be vice president. No, the Alpha
Hubert Humphrey.
Had Hubert Humphrey, who was a big, tall, 6'4" white boy, blonde hair, blue eyed, with a balding head. He got made in the late 30s as an undergrad up in Minnesota, and then again in the 40s in the grad chapter. And I understand they laid lots of wood on him. So he got pledged hard. So he was vice president under Lyndon Baines Johnson and the Democratic Party candidate for president unsuccessfully against Richard Nixon.
Well, Judge, it says here on Wikipedia, Humphrey was made an honorary life member in 1965.
Yeah, I was pledged then. He wasn't made an honorary member. A life member means you don't have to pay dues.
Okay.
I know what that is. That's the year I started pledging.
And isn't your frat brother is Roland Martin?
Yeah, we let in a few bad specimens every night. He didn't get made hard. So you know what the interesting thing is about these black frats and sororities is they were masquerading as Greek social organizations because they were revolutionary organizations intended to fight American apartheid, aka segregation, 120 years ago. And it was dangerous. People got lynched, got killed, got shot, disappeared. And the pledging was brutal because the idea was to test you to see if you could survive being tortured by Sheriff Bubba Willis or something like that. Now, Speaking of Willis, frat brother A.W. Willis and Russell Sugarman, frat brother, Alphas, they were the first parties called when Emmett Till got murdered. And they went down there with Ernest Withers, who was a black cop, also became a famous photographer. Right. And I talked to all three of them years ago separately. And what apparently happened is Withers took a bunch of rolls of film, didn't develop them, gave half to Willis and half to Sugarman, and their mission was to get up to Illinois and get the film to the Illinois governor, who could demand Till's body back. Now, what seems to have happened is they split up. A bunch of cars got shot up, burned up. People got wounded. And A.W. said he got captured by a sheriff and tortured for several hours to tell where Russell was. And he didn't, because he said what the sheriff did to him was nothing compared to what he went through going to Hell Week. So he escaped. And they met up, got the film developed at, I think it was a Walgreens, and then took it to the Illinois governor, and then the rest is history.
This was Ernest Withers?
Yes. No, not Withers. This was A.W. Willis
A.W. Willis. Okay.
He was alpha, and so was Russell Sugarman, his law partner.
Right.
And Willis advised that he had gotten captured by this sheriff down in Mississippi, and they were torturing him, trying to find out where Russell was. So Willis wound up escaping after a few hours and didn't tell anybody anything. So that's what the pledging was about, is to jack you up during pledge week, during hell week, crossing the sands to see if you could take what would happen if you got caught. That's the same thing that they do in the military when you're in the Air Force. You know, you fly the bombers or whatever, they test you, give you some stuff to see if you can withstand what happens when you get this no holds barred interrogation. So that's basically what it is. Now, these people that didn't get made hard, I mean, some of them are probably good brothers, but they did not show the commitment and they did not get tested. And it's a whole different thing when it just becomes a social organization so you can party. This was not about partying. This was about people getting lynched, getting jacked up, put in penitentiaries, disappearing, being tortured, being murdered, being mutilated. That's what it was all about, to do something about that. And if you look at the people who did something all through the civil rights era up until later, you will find that a lot of them had some kind of fraternal or sororal involvement with this process. There are 9 of them now, but I don't even count the 9th one because it didn't have any historical connection with when the stuff was hot and heavy back when, from 100 some years ago up until more recently.
Most definitely. Okay, that's interesting to note with that. So that's what.
Yeah. So when you get a Roland Martin or some of the people that might be dressing up in pink with little Tootsie Toes on, high heel shoes.
That's a damn lie. Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah. So that has absolutely nothing to do with the purpose of the organizations. So there's all kinds of myth about it. But the last thing they used to be was Boule. Those were some hardcore brothers. That was back when, if you were into being something, you got up and you went to college and you did what Du Bois was talking about, being part of the talented 10th that had an obligation to help the people bootstrap themselves up. See, that was the way it. Now they look like Atlanta housewives, denizens, you know, trying to do what they do. I mean, some of them are probably good. I met one or two, but you know, it ain't the same thing. Roly Poly Martin, you know, the Pillsbury Doughboy with chocolate chips, he gets in there and what's he doing? He's trying to get everybody to accommodate being on a slave plantation. And it's embarrassing to me. People that went out there on a limb. Like, for example, you get Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketball player, the NBA GOAT. He was Big Lou Alcindor, Lucius Allen, Mike Warren, all of these people, Willie Smith, football player. All of these folk you could count on. Cliff Stewart, Skip Johnson. You know, I'm naming a few. Brown. You get all of these people who put it all on the line to do stuff. Bunchy Carter, John Huggins, you know, you get these folk, Kerry. We all did these kind of things to advance the cause. And we went to jail. Some of us got killed. Some of us got wounded. There was a lot going on. And then we started getting these folk that took advantage of it. And when you started trying to get them to move on things, it's, brother, it's not that I don't appreciate everything that you've done and the sacrifices you've made, but I can't afford to jeopardize my career. You'll have to go on without me, but I'll be there with you in spirit. Grab that fool. And I remember there was one person, let's just say his name was Eddie. I won't get into the last part of it, but he's dead now. He had on some gray slacks and some tan shoes. So we kind of drug him to add to the numbers, since he had benefited greatly by what we had done that opened doors for somebody like him. And when he gets there, he got so scared he pissed his pants. You can see the dark stain going down his left gray pant leg, and a pile of piss, a puddle of piss that stained his left shoe all up. And the brothers that were holding him said, damn, man, they jumped back and he fell in the pool of his own piss. And after a few minutes, when he would recover, he just jumped up and ran off on a dead sprint. But for 3 U.S. presidents, he was a consultant on black militants, you know, because he was supposed to have been all this and that, but he was a coward and he was a punk. So, you know, I think about that, and I think about all of the black folk that died in that time period that, you know, it's not like now where every time somebody scratched, they run a full story on it to keep the 24/7 news interesting.
Right.
A lot of people suffered and died and got jacked up, but you know, now they don't talk about them. They just talk about a few name brand somebodies, and we haven't had a hero in 55 years. So who are our black heroes? Name of them that's been actually doing something, putting it on the line rather than just talking or doing some kind of entertainment. So it is what it is.
Let me ask you this, Judge. Getting just briefly, if I can, getting back to the video that I showed with Breakfast Club. I'm just curious. Do you think I already know the answer to this, but it's for everybody. Do you think you could have been, especially when you asked it about Kamala Harris and what you thought of her, do you think that was very harsh? Could you have been different?
No, I was being nice. See, what Kamala Harris is about, look, you see, my perspective is what Kamala Harris is about, put a lot of people I knew in the ground. In other words, I just told you a story about the guy pissing his pants. That was the male equivalent. They haven't done a damn thing for black folk. They just coasted on what somebody else was doing. Montel, Willie Brown, you know, you name it, that crew, some of the frat folk at Howard who needed relief, they got it. So I guess she was helpful that way, keep the morale up. But what has she done for the people?
Yeah.
See, did she get in a position where she did programs, where she did something to reach out to young black men, not to put them in jail and give them the stiffest sentences in America for simple possession of marijuana in San Francisco? Did she go set up educational programs, vocational programs? Did she deal with counseling sessions? Did she come up with ideas for the courts to deal with sentences less restrictive than full incarceration for those who merited it, who were redeemable? Did she do something about her situation to influence young women of all races? Has she done anything to help out the importation of the caste system with her people that's coming over from India, where they're actually bringing untouchability over here? Has she done anything about reaching out so that she helps in the position she's held, so that we have financial benefit to people? When she was a U.S. Senator, did she take the opportunity to come up with any legislation that made some of the banking laws a little bit fairer to those who are black folk or Indian or whatever, when it might have come to business investments? Did she do any of that? No. So
No.
exactly why should somebody celebrate this?
Well, Van Jones said we're, you know, and others are saying we should protect her, and black men are not.
Because she's more man than he is with his
It's identity politics, yeah.
Yeah, look. I call CNN because of him, Van Jones, and what's the other one that was on there?
John Lemon,
Lemon Booty Boy. And, you know, I call it Crying Negro Network, CNN.
Yeah, I gotta. Well, I'm moving with that, and we're gonna get to the Trump appearance at the conference. Everybody, CC says Van Jones is crying for that 100 million Bessie's gave him. Bessie's gave him. I don't know who that is, but Ronald McDonald asks Judge Joe, "How are you going to get me to vote for Trump and not Cornel West this election season?"
Because Cornel West is not going to get elected. And the bottom line is one, you don't need your guns taken from you, which the woman has promised to do within 100 days, which what is clearly going to be a constitutionally deficient executive order. Okay, next thing, She's not going to do a damn thing about your employment circumstances because she's going to fast track the naturalization for 20 million illegals that she let across the border when she was a border czar and failed at that. Next bloody doggone thing, historical black colleges and universities aren't getting anything because remember, she's been saying over and over, you don't expect me to do something especially for African Americans. She said,
I'm not going to sit here and do any specifically say I'm going to do something specific for black people. No.
Yeah.
And I show
also,
people, I show people that, and they were still like, well, she can't, that would be career suicide. She can't specifically say it. I said, they're doing it for everybody else. She's doing it. And to lead that with Judge, I got to ask you, because I had a friend who was saying that he felt I wasn't balanced enough with my commentary. And some people are saying that, like, we're not coming hard against the Republicans.
Why should you? You know what they're about. And they're in a position where they would appreciate the black vote. Now, it's up to us to induce them to start delivering some tangibles in return for that black vote. Every other ethnic group in the history of the United States has periodically flopped or been on both sides because who is going to give them the best advantage? We act like we have dog loyalty to the Democratic Party. Now, for a number of years, granted,
I never endorsed Cornel West, by the way, or said I was going to vote for him.
I get it. He's not a bad guy, but there's no chance of him winning. So what do you want to do? Throw your vote away? Be effective. There's a war going on, and we need to win this war. And you win the war by getting allies. England, the United States, and the Soviet Union all allied to go after Tojo, Benito, and Adolf, and they did. They might have fallen out afterwards, but they sure as hell formed alliances. That's like you're playing football, basketball, baseball. You may not like everybody on the team, but you're a team player, so you're trying to help the team out. You go get people who will work with you. So my problem is this. I have grandchildren, so I don't particularly like somebody that's trying to turn grandson into a girl and turn the girl into a boy. I don't like the nonsense they're trying to cram down their throat and put this cult in their heads. I do not like the employment prospects that they're setting up. I do not like what they're doing educational wise in school. I think the thing with inflation is absolutely ridiculous because it's pandering too much to the investment industry that under the circumstances of high but controlled inflation make a hell of a lot more money and get a lot more economic benefit than if the situation stays stable. I don't like what's going on with the energy situation. I certainly think it stinks to high heavens what's done with the military, where you've turned it into a social experiment rather than maintaining it as a fighting instrument. I think we're in the Ukraine because we're trying to save Biden's ass, because under Article 6, what does it say under Article 6? Ratified treaties are the part of the three-pronged supreme law of the land. Supreme Court, not Supreme Court, the Constitution, laws passed to carry out the Constitution, and ratified treaties. That's Article 6. A ratified treaty is part of the supreme law of the land. And what do we have in here? We have a ratified treaty from 1999 negotiated by President Bill Clinton, and it says essentially Ukraine and the United States in treaty with each other so that each agrees to apprehend, detain, and extradite parties wanted through criminal process by the other. Late October 2020, right before the election, Ukraine's Supreme Court ordered unredacted a multiple-page criminal enterprise indictment naming Joe and Hunter Biden principally as primary indictees. So technically, we're supposed to take him into custody and send him over to Ukraine. Now, I know they're not going to do it since he's commander-in-chief and diplomatic immunity and all of that, but he's looking at it, and maybe that's why he doesn't want to leave the White House until he's continued to make the arrangements, and Ukraine has been backed up. So is that why we're there, or is it for the national interest? By the way, if you listen to what the Russians are saying, They are over there because, one, they're being asked by people who for 1,000 years were either part of the old Russian Empire under the Tsars, or before that the Vikings, or they were part of the Soviet Union and now they want to get back. That's one. Next one is they're trying to end the sex trafficking that's going over there, which is horrible. And number three, they're trying to end the resurgence of Nazism, which is springing up over there because Stalin did not take care of the Nazi problem. And he told the rest of Europe to keep hands off. This was part of the Soviet Union, meaning the Ukraine, which was the largest republic in the Soviet Union. We'll take care of it. He didn't. And now Nazis are resurgent. So that's one of the things. And the other one is to stop what happened in the opening ceremonies at the Olympic game, because the rest of the world does not want this new kind of religious crusade going on. And that's what they are. One, stop the rainbow. Two, stop the Nazis. And three, let the many folk who wanted to reunionize with Russia like they have been for 1,000 years. That's like Texas deciding to take off. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's a civil war. And during our civil war, we did all kinds of things to keep Europe out of our civil war.
Right. Well, Judge, in going to Kamala, and I want to get to that, get back to her in a little bit, but I do want to point out they also wanted me to talk about the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025. Is my understanding.
Okay. How about this one? Because Heritage Foundation formulated.
That's a think tank.
Yeah, it's a think tank. It's a DC conservative think tank. They propounded Project 25. Trump has rejected it. But now let's talk about the Heritage Foundation. So what if they urge it on Trump? How about their little pet jungle boy, Barack Obama, aka Barry Soetoro, cousin to George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, Dick Cheney, and Sarah Palin? They're all cousins, right? All right. Now, what is the connection? For the short 2 years he was in the U.S. Senate, the Heritage Foundation ranked Barack Obama as their number 3 most conservatively voting U.S. senator, even though he had the lowest voting record. So the top man got a 97%, the second man got a 96 plus, and Obama got a 96. So he was their 3rd highest rated U.S. senator. So how about all the Negroes who love Barack Obama with his ineffective self, who want to get upset because the same foundation that endorsed him is somebody that endorses a program that Trump rejects? Now, are they going to lie about it some more? Find where he said, I agree to it. You can't, because
he denounced it on his Truth Social platform.
Yeah, he denounced it.
Yeah.
So find someplace to say it's supposed to be him. So if you're worried about them offering him a program, then why weren't you worried about them rating Barack? You know?
Yeah. Judge, let me just stop you for a second. Everybody, if you could, I want you to smash up the likes. We got 300. Judge, this is probably the most people I've had in a long time. I want to thank you because I got over 310 people, probably even more than that are watching. And, you know, YouTube has us on a shadow ban, ladies and gentlemen. So if you would, please, I'm not a beggar, but if you love me for my time, pay me for my time. The Cash App is at the bottom right as well. Those tickers, you can donate to the channel. So I want to share with everybody just a little bit about Project 2025. Yes, it is a conservative platform from the Heritage Foundation think tank. And the founder of the Heritage Foundation, Paul Dans, well, he's not the founder, but he's the director. He actually stepped down on Tuesday from 2025. So Dans was the previous chief of staff of Office of Personnel Management in the Trump administration. But I want to say this, for those worried about Project 2025, I don't think anybody, Judge, and I'm sure you've heard of this, has anybody complained about Agenda 21 that's set up by the United Nations? Agenda 21, which you can all look at, that actually is even more disturbing. Now, this Agenda 21 has been around for years. I've heard about it, but Agenda 21 is now, of course, we live in the United States, and this was from a Rio summit that they did, which is an action plan basically for one world, where they want a collection of all government organizations together to bring about a global change. But the United States is not obligated to acknowledge Agenda 21. Why? Because the Constitution is the law of the land. Am I right, Judge?
That's it.
You're not obligated.
But the Constitution does say, Article 1, Section 8, that one of the responsibilities of the U.S. government and the American military, especially the Navy, is to, quote, enforce the law of nations. And also, we still go back to Article 6 of the Constitution that says ratified treaties are part of the supreme law of the land. So we have a myopic view of what we've done. We sometimes fail to associate what the law of nations is as reflected by the United Nations. And we sometimes forget to consider the effects of treaties that we have ratified that concern the United Nations. So it's not anything that we have to do unless we choose to do it, because since we're one of the power players in the UN, there's nobody in there except Russia and China. Do much of anything about whether we go along with it or not, and vice versa. So that's the way it was set up, and the rest of it is just polite debate society for the most place to set the tenor for things rather than to actually regulate them.
Right. I want to go, Judge. Let's go to the main thing we want to talk about. And look, on Sunday, I did a whole broadcast about Kamala Harris. They say I mispronounced her name. Is it Kamala?
In Mississippi, they call her Kamala.
But how does she pronounce it?
I don't know. Don't care.
I hear Kamala.
I probably have a worse opinion of her than most of the woke folk do of Donald Trump. At least I've seen Donald Trump with my own two eyes hanging around in a black club with no bodyguards, glad handing it with black folk, relaxed and having a good time.
Have you met Kamala? Like, let's just
I never met her. She's not my type.
Vice
anyway.
President Harris, no.
Dumpy, but I mean, I knew people that had encountered her professionally, and these were people I recruited to law school years ago out at UCLA. And they reported to me she was not very energetic, not very innovative, and basically kind of lazy. That's where I came up with that remark about she hiked her hemline. I know that there was a lady prosecutor and a lady defender in my courtroom, and sometimes I had to call the court reporter back to chambers and say, ladies, you're going to have to drop those hemlines. They're getting a little too high.
And that was to get attention so they could get what they want.
Yeah, I just said there is a limit here. The guys have a dress code, so should the ladies. Now, let's be a little bit more decorous. It's getting out of hand. Yeah. So, you have to deal with these things. And by the way, this thing that you've got up here, this tickled me. See, Trump's been hanging around with black men for a long time.
Right.
He's picked up the knack of, in polite society, they call it witty repartee. We call it running the dozens. Or when somebody's talking about your mama, can you talk about your mama back? Or when you wolfing on somebody, what can you say back? And she tried to jump him. She's being coached by Pillsbury Doughboy with the chocolate chips in the front row.
Rolling?
Yeah. And yeah, and Trump roasted her behind. It was embarrassing to me that she put herself in that position. He said, look, you've been... Anyway, if you play it, you can hear it.
We're gonna play it, Judge. And I'm also going to play a clip from Roland later. Because Roland was saying Trump lied about him funding HBCUs, but
he didn't. I remember when it came out. He was responsible on an executive order to disperse discretionary funds to the extent that historical HBUs got loans and direct funding, and they were on a better financial footing after he did that than at any time since 1968 under the Johnson administration. So he wasn't telling any lie. And then the Biden administration cut almost 3/4 out of what they had budgeted for our historical HBCUs. So black folk under his administration had their highest purchasing power since I think it was 1967. So you want to denegate that and then talk about this mess we've got now where inflation is ridiculous. Gas prices are awful. The infrastructure is decayed in the country. The educational process has gone to hell and nobody wants their kids in a public school anymore if they can do something about it. But anyway, I get too far ahead of myself.
Yeah. Well, let's play the video. Now, this is
NABJ.
Ashley Scott. I just talked about her earlier. She's actually on ABC News. Ashley Scott is a AKA, by the way. And AKA is also Kamala Harris's sorority.
Yeah, my mother was an AKA. She got made in 1934. So the family's got seniority. So was my aunt, my older aunt. So anyway, she got made in 1930 something. I think it was at Fisk University in Nashville. Yeah. So anyway, not 1930, 1928, I think it was. So anyway, let's go there if you want to go
has
there.
Partnered with PolitiFact to fact check this conversation in
fair
real
use,
time.
By the way, fair
you
use.
can access that feed on social media.
And they started, and it's something important too. They started late with the
30 minutes. Yeah,
I heard it was longer than that. They started late, and the audio was messed up. So
check again. The hashtag is NABJ fact check. We have a lot to get to, and we do not want to waste any time. So let's bring out the former president of the United States, the Republican nominee for president.
Not one. And, you know, you could have gotten Tavis Smiley. You could have gotten Ed Gordon. I don't know about Roland, but you could have had one black man at least on that panel.
Former President Donald Trump.
They stood up for him.
Thank you.
Fair use.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
I'm gonna let Trump respond, but I'm just gonna ask y'all, do y'all think that was professional, how she started? Do you think she would have came at Joe Biden like that or Bill Clinton?
No, she wouldn't have come at that racist dog whose family owns slaves.
Whether you like Trump or not.
Yeah, whether you like Trump or not. And by the way, Biden, it turns out on a report that the Irish did, is actually blood kin related to guess who?
Kamala.
Yeah, through her mama, who also has a little Irish slipped in there too.
Right.
So interesting.
But let's
family affair, huh?
Yeah, but let's play and watch. Now on the right, that's Yaris Faulkner from Fox News, and this sister in the middle, her name, I think she was a little more respectful. I think her name is, I keep forgetting it, is Kadia Goba from Semaphore. So I don't know too much about her, but.
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner? First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late, just so we understand. I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working, or something
Mr.
was
President,
wrong.
I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you
I have
believe that
answered
black
the
voters
question.
should trust you with another
I
4
have
years.
been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President
That's
Johnson,
my
who signed the
answer.
Voting Rights
And
Act.
for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have
Let me stop it for a second. So I actually, I got to close out some of these things too, because it takes up a lot of memory. I want to ask you, I put on a question for everybody. Do y'all think Trump rocked, or do you think he sucked? So it's in the poll. I want to know how you felt he did with this. But do you think, on that first thing, how do you think he did, Judge?
He did fine. One of the rules about debate, political presentation, or anything else, if they ask you the wrong question, answer the right question. So that's what he did. In other words, screw you, that was some BS. I'm going to answer what I should have, which is, you also didn't ask me a question. You made accusations. What do I think about the accusations? I'm not dignifying them because they're false. You made false accusations. Actually, I endorse some of those accusations, and I would say the same things about some of the subjects that she is saying he insulted.
Yeah, Judge, I want to point out too, she mentioned even more than Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson, I mean, there are audio tapes of him saying the N-word, even Richard Nixon, but Johnson did give tangibles to black, as you've pointed out.
He certainly did.
Right.
Like
he created affirmative action, and he specifically said it was to remedy racial discrimination against Negroes.
Yeah, and he's got a black son, by the way. He had a son in 1966 with the White House, with a White House secretary. I met the guy years ago, along with a son he had with a woman, no relation.
Madeline Brown.
Marie Brown, yeah.
Madeline Brown, yeah. She said something.
Marie Brown. And that's what we all called her. And I talked to her several years running at conferences on assassinations down in Dallas, and she introduced me to her son, looked just like LBJ, and also to the boy born in 1966, who was a man at the time, so I guess I shouldn't say that, but he looked just like LBJ, same size, same features, big ears, with a very slight suntan. So yeah, he's got a connection with black folk. That's his he leaves his legacy to that. That's his heir. So
right.
So yeah, now,
we'll
I agree with it. LBJ was good for black folk. There's a different attitude people have toward him now, but back then he was great white daddy in the White House to black folk. The way
there've been a few presidents, Abraham Lincoln. I'd even say Ulysses Grant did give some stuff.
Yeah.
Grant created the Department of Justice, which went after the Klan in the late 1800s. So,
and you're talking about, by the way, General Howard, who lost an arm in the Civil War, and they put him in charge of the Freedmen's Bureau. He had a horrible list, but he was a heroic guy. Interesting to bring up Ulysses Grant. I find something that he put in his memoirs about black folk very interesting. He talked about how he was unsure how black soldiers were going to fit in after the war and whether they could be voting citizens or not. And he said he conducted a survey after the war was over, and he found that the only completely literate units in the whole Union Army above a certain size or below a certain size were colored volunteers. And he said you never saw a braver group of soldiers. He said you never saw any of the black soldiers drunk. He said they were always reading.
they were disciplined.
Yeah, and they were students, and they would make excellent citizens, so he wholeheartedly endorsed them.
Right.
Now, that's interesting that you put Grant in there, because I'd say that's pretty accurate. It would be Lincoln, Grant, it would be
Johnson.
I think Truman. He signed Executive Order 1981 integrating the armed services, and he was the first one to attend an NAACP conference in D.C. Made a good speech, and he got a lot of flack for doing it, but he did it. And then you've got not Kennedy. Eisenhower was a surprisingly friendly person. You know, he sent the 101st Airborne down to Little Rock, Arkansas, to open up that high school where Faubus was standing famously in front of the door. As long as I'm governor of Arkansas, there will not be a Negro coming in through the gates or the doors of this high school. And by the way, I saw Faubus with my own two eyes and heard him with my own two ears introduce Joe Biden in 1972 at a campaign rally and endorse him as the up-and-coming Dixiecrat for the next few decades. So that same one was in association with the current jackass in the White House. So yeah, talk about Trump. Let's talk about the ones that are in there right now.
Roy Faubus,
But
John B. Stennis, James Eastland, and George Wallace and Strom Thurmond were some of his mentors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wallace.
And don't forget Byrd, former Grand Dragon.
Yeah, Robert Byrd. Didn't Kennedy have Wallace removed from the University of Alabama when he stood in the door and said segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever?
Yeah, he sent the National Guard, I think he nationalized now.
James Meredith was another one in Mississippi. Right.
That's right. So all of these things happened. I was paying attention. Hell, I had to do some assignments on that. But bottom line is Kennedy didn't really do much of anything for black folk. And his Civil Rights Act that was proposed was so damn weak that LBJ withdrew it. And LBJ came up with a stratagem to get the one passed that we have now. And he introduced it as a military bill. If you read the preamble, it doesn't say civil rights. It says because the United States depends upon its naval personnel, you have to keep the morale up. And as long as they're being discriminated against, that drops. And the United States is not able to reduce the forces of communism and tyranny in the world. Therefore, be it resolved that they need the civil rights bill, so the morale of the troops and their families is kept at a high point.
Yeah.
So,
Shan, I gotta hold on, Judge. I'm sorry. I gotta disagree with you. You said Dr. King was an Uncle Tom. No.
Who said? I didn't say that.
No, not you. Shan wrote that.
Dr. King was a creature of his circumstances. He was a preacher. Understand that preachers are essentially supposed to be saving souls, not being political animals. And there's several political activists around the world have observed, in order to do what you need to do for your people, you sometimes have to be willing to go to hell to do it. They had an old phrase, hell is for heroes. So that's necessarily a preacher's job.
Yeah. Well, Malcolm X and Dr. King actually met. and shook hands. Now, nobody knows what happens in that meeting, but look, Dr. King in his last years, as you know, Judge, started talking about even reparations and started to sound very militant. And you, of course, were James Earl Ray's final judge.
Yeah,
You and
he
you
did. Yeah, Ray didn't kill King. J. Edgar Hoover made the arrangements to have King assassinated. There was a two-man hit team that was recruited, it looked like, from the Quantico Marine Sniper School, which was right across the tarmac from the FBI training academy there. So the FBI supplied the weapons. I have the serial numbers of the ones in question. There were 5 of them delivered to the FBI late December 1967 on invoice. 5,000 rounds of the ammunition. It's consistent with what was pulled out of King's body. Late April 1968, King having been assassinated at the beginning of April, the Justice Department ordered the FBI to return the 5 experimental weapons to the Defense Department to be sent to the NAM. The FBI claims they lost one. I have the serial number on the missing rifle, and that's the one that killed King. So, yeah, this is the one that the Black Caucus, the bunch that the Black Caucus seems so in love with.
all right, they don't talk about the radical King. And
What's that?
I said, yeah, Dr. King started to get real radical near the end of his life.
And by the way, what they killed him for, from the memoranda that were secured from the FBI after Congress in late 1989 set up a repository on 14th Street in downtown DC for records on assassinations and assassination attempts, was that they killed him not because of civil rights. They were having a debate on whether he'd be more dangerous as a live martyr, as a dead martyr, or as a live galvanizer of the anti-war movement and somebody who would revive the labor movement, which were looked at as poisons. They didn't give a damn about the civil rights thing. That was essentially dead in 1967 and 1968. The young black folk were militant in a fashion that today's youth just would not understand. They have what they do now is disorderly and rowdy, but it's not organized and directed toward revolutionizing by any means necessary what's going on in this country. And we had H. Rap Brown, who got in a lot of trouble and got set up by a black organization. I won't get into that now, who always used to pull out a book of matches. You could get them anywhere, grocery stores, movie houses, gas stations, and he'd say, you got the means right here, burn, baby, burn. You have power and you can vest consequence. Now, he got a case that got him penitentiary bound because a certain black organization snuck a disassembled carbine in his luggage when he was under indictment by the feds for inciting riots around the country. They got him at LAX. I'd been one of his bodyguards for that week. So we told him not to trust these certain people, but he went ahead and they got him in the penitentiary. But we do it to each other.
Right. Let's finish the video.
Yeah, let's see that. I want to see this roasting.
Yeah. So, and then I'm going to play your alpha brother, Roland Martin, later.
Enabled Vice President Kamala Harris, who was the first Black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir, I'm asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me if you
I
would.
just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a Black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always
But you know
identified
what?
as a black woman.
I
She went to a
respect either
historically black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't.
I gotta stop here now.
Truth. Look. Truth on X today, it's been making the rounds, is the video where Biden is talking about she is being selected as his vice presidential candidate because of DEI. He says it. That's how she got a job. So
Right.
anyway,
I want to play this because Tariq found this story. This was from 4 years ago. Tariq Nasheed was, and he drops receipts. But this is from CNN, where she talks about her roots. And they found even old footage of Kamala Harris where she celebrated for her Indian heritage.
yeah, and I think there's a cooking show and all that stuff too.
So hold on, let me play this video right quick. I'm gonna put it back to the
who raised me and my sister was a proud woman. She was a brown woman. She was a woman with a heavy accent.
And her mother, Shamla Gopalan, was also the biggest influence in Kamala Harris's life.
The answer is absolutely yes.
After the big announcement, Harris's sister wrote in a Twitter post, knowing who our mother was. In 1990, she traveled thousands of miles from her home and family to pursue a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology in America. She soon became an active civil rights crusader while studying at UC Berkeley.
Once she went there, she almost felt free. And she took part in politics. She used to bring a whole series of literature, leftist literature from Karl Popper's, he was a great philosopher.
In her book, Harris says, there is no title or honor on earth I'll treasure more than to say I am Shamla Gopalan Harris's daughter. Harris's visits to India with her mother kept her connected to her roots. Her grandfather, who had strong views on humanitarian issues, worked closely with officials to reallocate refugees. Their conversations had a strong influence on her.
Those walks along the beach in India really planted something in my mind and created a commitment in me before I even realized it. That has led me to where I am today.
Harris's maternal uncle, Gopalan Balachandran, who lives in Delhi, tells us how the senator turns to her amma, which means mother in Tamil, for guidance even after her death.
I don't have to tell her, make your mother proud. She said, what are you telling me? Everything that I do, I ask myself, would Amma approve of this?
Kamla in Hindi means lotus flower and is an important symbol in Indian culture, rooted deep in the bottom of the river. Very similar to Harris's Indian identity, which she wears on her sleeve. There's no doubt that the primary source of learning for Senator Harris was from her mother's experiences and the conversations that she had with her maternal grandfather when she visited India, which was very often accompanying her mother, or when the grandparents would visit them in America. Back to you.
So now look, I'm not even bothered or tripping on what, her race and so forth, as much as I don't care for her record. And I think even the fact, I guess, that she's been dishonest in many ways in her career with some stuff is the problem.
Well, let's analyze the accusation against Trump, since it's been playing all day on X, where Biden some years ago was saying he was selecting Kamala Harris for essentially DEI purposes. That's how she got a job. Did Trump lie about that when he accused her of that? No, he was just regurgitating what her boss said. Next thing is, does she have an Indian claim? All while I was in California, she was an Indian, not black. So that was something surprising to me when she started claiming black after she got in the U.S. Senate. So like, wait a minute, isn't it the same chick who was talking about she was Indian? Now, when did she become that? Mm-hmm. So he's not lying about that. So what is it where she's accusing him of being a liar or exaggerating? Everything he said, you can see. Look at that. Going to India. She didn't grow up in the United States. She doesn't have any ancestors who were enslaved in the United States of America. She has ancestors that had a lot of slaves in the English colonies, and the Irish who reported on her, since she is of Irish descent, they noted that her ancestor was paid 11 million pounds, which is a whole bunch of money, for his loss in slaves when the English freed the slaves in the islands in the 1840s, late 1840s. So he used the money allegedly to hire fellow Irish workers to replace them, which, by the way, brought a bunch of Irish into Jamaica Island.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Let's get back to let's get back to the video. I'm gonna finish it, but you know, she's Indian. Yeah, her father is Jamaican and she's Indian, and I've showed the birth certificate. The origin, and Judge, even if you look on, you know, like my mother's birth certificate back then, they would say or describe blacks as Negro or colored would be on the certificate.
And what it says with the father is it's an erroneous birth certificate. It's a duplicate. And what it says on this thing is race of the mother, Caucasian.
Right.
National origin, India.
The birthplace.
On father, it says national origin, blank, and it says race or ethnicity, it says Jamaican. Jamaican is not a race nor an ethnicity.
It says.
And by the way, she was born in the hospital where my late mother-in-law was a delivery room nurse, may have delivered her at the time she was born. And my ex-wife
at Kaiser Foundation Hospital
in San Francisco, this same hospital, my ex-wife was born there in the same 12-month period. I know what the birth certificates look like because I got a duplicate for her so she could get a passport. So I know what they look like. And that's an erroneous one because for the father, it leaves race or ethnicity blank. No, it doesn't. Instead of that, it puts in Jamaican, but where it says national origin, it leaves it blank. That should have been Jamaican. With the mother, it says Indian. For the mother, it says race or ethnicity. It says Caucasian.
Right. So let's finish the video with Trump. So he's cooking. I'm just being real.
He's running the dozens.
Yeah, and I saw Isaac Hayes III was saying, "Oh man, come on, Trump lost this. Come on, man."
Oh, come on, he whipped some behind on this one.
Because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe that
I think somebody should look into that too when you ask. Continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some Republicans
I really don't
have said?
know. I mean, I really don't know. Could be. There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length, and we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that.
Well, you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look, I want to talk about why you're here today. I mean, it is not lost on us how divided we are as a country. And as you were coming today, we really got to see that we are divided along the lines of race, along the lines of gender. And there is this question of, in this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it, but one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's
a black job is anything. What I do, what you did, Judge, is a black job. We have black judges.
Yeah.
We have black doctors.
Yeah.
We have black lawyers. We have black postmen. And yes, lay people. I'm talking about grass cut people that mow lawns, garbage men, anybody.
And you got
black, and those are good to have black-owned businesses.
And you have 20 million new people on a fast track to nationalization without going through the classes, understanding the culture, understanding the politics, the laws, or anything else, or the necessary dynamics. Where do you think they're going to work, and who do you think is going to get displaced? What is it we have a reputation for? Last hired, first fired. So guess who's at jeopardy for getting eliminated from the job market? What are you going to do with 20 million people dumped into the job market, and most of them are coming in as basic laborers. Who do you think is going to get displaced?
Yeah.
By the way, he came back and he did well on that.
Yeah. Hey, let's finish.
That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
Anybody has
And
Mr. President,
they're
can I-
taking the employment away from black people. They're coming in, they're invading. It's an invasion of millions of people, probably 15, 16, 17 million people. I have a feeling it's much more than that. And everybody's been seeing what's happened. The first group of people, the black population, is affected most by that. And Kamala is allowing it to happen. She's the border czar. She's the worst border czar in the history of the world. There's never been a border czar like this. She's never even essentially been. She said she was there once, but not the right part of the border. So she was a border czar. She's done a horrible job. These people are coming into our country and they're taking black jobs and Hispanic jobs. And frankly, they're taking union jobs. Unions are being very badly affected by all of the millions of people that are pouring into our country. And one thing, as we discussed, many of these people are coming in from mental institutions, from prisons, from jails. They're gang members in other countries. Other countries are setting loose their prisoners. They're opening up their prisons and their mental institutions, and they're taking their bad people, drug dealers, gang members, and they're bringing them into the United States. And by the way, their crime rate is going down, and our crime rate is going to be a disaster.
Mr. President, I want to get into how you address some of the issues with black communities. And I say that plural because we live in communities of color that are different. We're not all the same. We don't vote the same. We don't think the same. It's not monolithic. So as you come here today, I want to talk about something that bursts. And this is the weight of the inflation on this country right now. The nonprofit Money Management International recently released data from its mid-year analysis that we have found a 52% rise in people who are seeking counseling for being in credit debt. They're paying for food that is sky high on their credit cards, and now they can't pay that off. The credit counseling nonprofit MMI, as I said, is saying now that they've seen surges that they haven't seen since we were in a pandemic of people in financial trouble. Much of that falls on the shoulders of single moms, single black moms, when you look statistically. Yeah. How do you turn it around? What's your plan for the black community when it comes to money?
So, first of all, it's very hard to hear you for whatever reason because of the fact that they have bad equipment, because I guess, this woman was unable to get the right equipment. But it's very hard for me to hear you, but I can hear every other word. It's very difficult, actually. But so I don't know if they can fix it or do something with it, but I'll do the best I can with it. The inflation is absolutely destroying our middle class, our working class, virtually every class. Inflation is a disaster in our country. Inflation is a country buster. It breaks every country. And we had, in my opinion, the worst inflation we've had. They say it's 58 years, but I think it's much more than that. It's been devastating. And if you just take a look at a lot of things they don't include, like interest rates. Interest rates went from 2.4% to 10%, and you can't get the money. People can't buy houses. They no longer have the American dream. Young people, young black people, they don't have the American dream anymore. They can't buy a house. They can't borrow the money because of the cost of the money. They can't buy it because of the cost of housing, because of the cost to build it, because of inflation. Inflation is a disaster, and it's destroying our country. And it's destroying the black community probably as much or more than any.
What's your plan?
You know what we have to do? We have to bring down the cost of energy, and that's going to bring down the cost of inflation. This was all started with a bad energy policy by Joe Biden. By the way, just if I might, I was running against a man named Biden. You probably saw that. And he was losing very badly in the polls. And then he had a rather bad debate. I would say it was a bad debate. I would say it was one of the worst debates in history, and his poll numbers crashed. And instead of saying, let's keep going and maybe something happens the other way, they said, oh, we're going to replace him. Let's just replace him. That's like.
I'm going to play the rest of it, but I really wanted to hear, and something the journalists, and you're going to listen to it. The journalists didn't ask specifically, and I think this was a wasted opportunity. And I think Trump also wasted his too. What specifically he would do for black people, a black agenda. The Platinum Plan was something he talked about in 2020. Ice Cube came to him with a plan for Black America. And he wanted to, Judge, if you recall, meet with both sides, Joe Biden's side and Trump's side. Trump's people talked to him, but if I'm not mistaken, Biden's people told Ice Cube, wait till after the election. And I don't think they ever had that conversation. And of course, it looks like, no, they didn't. And Joe Biden is not going to have any conversation, it looks like. But what he's talking about, inflation and so forth, how do you feel he was talking about?
Well, basically, the problem that is overlooked is it's not a Black problem. It negatively impacts us like it does everybody else in this country. So if he's got a solution for the country, it also benefits us. We come along for the ride, so to speak. The inflation that Black people suffer is not for causes that are different from the inflation that white people suffer. So if you cure the country's inflation for anybody, you cure it for everybody because you bring the money back under control. And that's essentially what he's talking about. He's indicating his policy direction in broad sweeps, which is about all you can do here because, you know, you can't talk about this other than in sound bites, the way they're working it here. Now, the way I look at it is I think that's answering the question. In other words, something needs to be done about energy. I know one of my roommates in college was from Nigeria. He was a Yoruba. His name was Fiasco. And he wound up being deputy minister for energy years ago, deputy chief minister for energy in Nigeria. And Nigeria at the time was the largest oil producing country in OPEC, not Saudi Arabia at the time. So as he told me, he said, your main problem with the inflation is because of your energy situation. Henry Kissinger came to us, and I was a flunky in our energy department, and I accompanied the main minister, and we went to a meeting called by the Shah of Iran at the behest of Henry Kissinger, and what we did was we were asked to form what became OPEC. We did. The United States asked us. He told us to invest heavily in the interim in Japanese and German automotive production, borrow steel.
Judge, anybody still here? Looks like the judge froze. All right, judge is back. To answer your question, someone said, why are Black folks obsessed with getting a candidate that would do something for Black people? Because
2, 3, 4.
I can hear you, Judge. Well, because we're seeing every other group.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I can hear you, Judge. Can you hear me? Because I'm a Black man and I care about Black issues, and every other group is getting taken care of but us. That's why.
2, 3, 4. Can you hear
me? I asked that. I can hear you.
You can hear me.
I can hear you, but you sound like you're far away.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm going to duck out and come back in.
Okay. No, we have to ask that. We're seeing Asians get Asian crime bills. We're seeing white women, they're trying to push for reproductive rights. We see the LGBTQ getting rights. Some of them not even getting human rights, but even getting out beyond that. They got gay rights. They didn't get human rights. I mean, the bathroom bills and stuff we've seen. So they get stuff specially fixated for them. So yes, I'm going to ask what's going to benefit Black people. Yeah, we want all America to succeed, but you know, there's an old saying, if America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. A rising tide, yeah, they say lifts all boats, but if the boat has our boat has a hole in it, the boat is going to go under. So that's what I'm doing. It's always, yeah. Everything is quid pro quo. So we're gonna wait for the judge. Judge is gonna come back here, but I can do. Let me do Judge Joe Brown. All right. So you see here, he's dealing with these kumquats who don't have a damn clue about any education. They got no justification being on there. They're not a man. There's not one man in there, and they want to actually go ahead and push this sissification, indoctrination onto the American people. Oh, damn, Dana, I can't stand it. Oh, look, Judge is back. Judge? All right. I'm waiting for Judge to come back. All these cackling hands. All right. All right. Judge?
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing.
I can hear you, Judge, although it's not as clear. It's not a matter of I want the government to take care of me. I don't want them to necessarily take care of me because I have my own business. I take care of myself. But if you're seeing, like I say again, other groups of people getting help for things, getting stuff, it's only natural we ask for something. And we as Black people have helped we built this country. My ancestors built it for free. So I'm going to ask. Bottom line.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, that's great. Let's go ahead and finish play the rest of the video.
You're in a fight, a prize fighter's in a fight. He's not doing where you say, let's bring in another fighter. So our whole campaign was steered toward him, and now we have to steer it to him. But ultimately, it's the same because they have bad policy. They have policies of open borders, unbelievable open borders, horrible energy policies. They want to get rid of, as you say, gasoline in cars. They want to get rid of oil. They want to get rid of efficient heating.
Mr. President.
Environmentally, what they're doing is killing our country. They're absolutely destroying our country. But the inflation is the thing that's hurting the Black worker, the Black population, and every other population within our country. Inflation is the worst it's been, I think, in over 100 years. And they'll fact check it. They'll say it's only 58. Whatever it may be, they don't add all the numbers. They don't add the really bad numbers, and you can check that too. But inflation, Harris, is absolutely destroying this country and the people in our country. Yes,
Mr. President, can I ask you another question
Yes,
that is also impacting Black Americans?
and that's very clear now.
Can you hold that a second?
Yeah.
The point of the exercise on that story when I got cut off was that what they were going to do when Kissinger set up OPEC was the first thing Kissinger said was, we want you to create an oil crisis. If you create an oil crisis and make the energy tight, that will ramp up inflation immediately. All of the money that you borrowed will now come to you cheaper because you will be able to charge higher prices and pay back less relative to what you're bringing in. So what he was telling me was periodically OPEC, directed by the United States and its oil affiliates and companies, would engineer moments of oil crisis where the pump price went up for oil that's supposed to be more expensive, that wouldn't get in the expensive form to the United States until about 14 months later. So that was used to generate inflation, the energy prices. So I got explained to me by somebody who at the time ran energy for the major OPEC oil producing country, where you borrow money and then you create inflation, which helps out the investment market. So that's what he's talking about right here with the energy. So I'd have to agree with him as a matter of economics.
All right.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and finish.
It's very clear. I hear you.
Okay. So Sonia Massey, Someone from Illinois, an unarmed Black woman, was shot the other day in her home by a deputy sheriff. The deputy has since been charged with murder. You said police would get immunity from prosecution if you win. Why should someone like that officer have immunity, in your opinion?
Immunity?
Immunity.
I don't know the exact case, but I saw something, and it didn't look good to me. It didn't look good to me. Are you talking with the water, right?
Yeah, well, police unions are not backing this person either. Okay. But again,
they're going to be charging the officer? I guess they're charging the officer.
So why should he receive immunity?
Well, he might not. I mean, it depends. It depends on what happens. I'm talking about people that are much different cases than that. We need people to protect ourselves. And by the way, in Chicago, as an example, a few weeks ago, July 4th weekend, they had 117 shootings and 17 deaths. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. We need to have our police officers have the respect and dignity back. In this particular case, I saw something that didn't look good to me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
So can you get a little more specific back to the immunity question? Who would make those
well, right now, for the most part, people are protected by their unions, by their police unions, or by their police departments. But I'm saying if I felt, or if a group of people would feel that somebody was being unfairly prosecuted because the person did a good job maybe with crime, or made a mistake, an innocent mistake. There's a big difference between being a bad person and making an innocent mistake. But if somebody made an innocent mistake, I would want to help that person.
What would those exceptions be? What would determine
you
an
go
innocent
after
mistake?
somebody and it's a very close call and it's very dangerous. And you know, they have the policeman's life and woman is a very difficult thing because sometimes you have less than a second to make a life and death decision. And sometimes very bad decisions are made. They're not made from an evil standpoint, but they're made from the standpoint of they made a mistake.
So I want to follow up really quickly. I find it interesting because you do talk about reining in prosecutors, especially when it comes to prosecutors that are prosecuting you. Why doesn't that skepticism apply to law enforcement?
Well, I've been prosecuted because I'm a political opponent of two people that have weaponized our justice system.
I can hear you, Judge.
I've been prosecuted. I just won the big case.
Okay. Oh, man. I can hear you. I don't know if the judge can hear me. Judge, can you hear me? I heard him loud and clear. But let's stop for a minute. We'll get the judge back. I'm sure he'll come in. Testing 1, 2, 3. Oh, damn, it's those punks from YouTube. They've cut my mic. Dana? Seeking, finding. Yeah, I know you got to roll. But look, I want to say this. Regarding qualified immunity, that only applies in civil lawsuits. You can sue if you were the victim of police brutality. People typically sue the police department and the city when those things happen. And yes, you can sue the officer as well, although they would be sued, I think, in their capacity as an employee, not so much as an individual. So when someone gets immunity, I think a lot of people may think that has anything to do with prosecution criminally. No, the criminal sector and the civil sector are two different things. You can go to criminal court and civil court. When you want to sue somebody, you go to civil court. If the state wants to press charges for breaking the law, they go to criminal court. So that pig who shot Sonia Massey was fired, and even the union is not protecting him. Rightfully so. That was murder, in my opinion, and what he did. So we're waiting for the judge to come back. I'm going to finish. Let me just finish playing the video a little bit.
In Florida, everyone said that was the biggest case. That was the most difficult case. And I just won it. Now, Biden has a similar case, except much worse. I was protected under the Presidential Records Act. Biden wasn't, because he wasn't president at the time. And he had 50 years worth of documents. And they ruled that he was incompetent, and therefore he shouldn't stand trial. And I said, isn't that something? He's incompetent and he can't stand trial. And yet He can be president. Isn't that nice?
Mr. President,
but they released him on the basis that he was incompetent. They said he had no memory and he was a nice old guy, but he had no memory. And so, therefore, we're not going to prosecute him. I won the case and it got very little publicity. I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We cover you extensively, sir. I'd love to move over on to
I
different
didn't notice
topics
you do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest case. This is an attack on a political opponent.
Talking about
I have another one where
he was talking about the documents case, and he mentioned.
I've heard this. I've looked at it before. This isn't my first viewing of the thing.
Of the video, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you watched the whole thing.
Yeah. You can keep playing for the audience.
I want to keep playing it for the audience, but
yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd love to. We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different topics.
Excuse you. You're the one that held me up for 35 minutes, just so you understand.
If we can move on now to the state of the race, sir. I want to get back to the campaign. Senator J.D. Vance is your running mate.
Damn. Judge, didn't you tell me, just to confirm, didn't Donald Trump, I think you were on an interview with Curtis Kuhn, that he was the financier for Jesse Jackson's campaign?
Yeah, he did. Both of them. He provided the offices and assisted or mostly managed the raising of the money.
Yeah.
A lot of controversy lately, and I want to read you a few things.
I'm sorry?
He's loaned a lot of black businessmen money that they couldn't get from regular financial institutions, and he's not even into the money loaning business.
Yeah.
That he has said in the past. He said the Democrats running the country are a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He's not talking here about how great it is to be a parent. He's attacking what he says are the choices people are making to not have children. Did you know that he had these views about people who do not have children before you picked him to be your running mate? And do you agree with him?
No, I know this. He is very family oriented.
Could you hold that point? What is the main problem in the black community? Is it childlessness? Or is it the single female parent having a bunch of babies and baby daddies with no family situation?
I think the latter, what you just
said. So what is she talking about when she acts like this is a diss upon black women? Is it black women or the typical white feminist that is offended here? So why is she taking the white supremacist version of the thing, if you want to put it that way? Interesting juxtaposition. Yeah.
And he thinks family is a great thing. That doesn't mean he thinks that if you don't have a family, it's not. I know people with families. I know people with great families. I know people with very troubled families. And I also know people with no families. They didn't meet the right person. Things happen. You go through life, you don't meet the right person.
But he's not just talking about families here. He also says that people that don't have children should get less votes than those that do.
I'm just speaking for myself.
Is that your campaign
I think
position?
I'm speaking for him too. He strongly believes in family, but I know people with great families. I know people with not great families that don't have a family. And the people without the family are far better. They're superior in many cases, okay? He's not saying they're not. What he's saying is that he thinks the family experience is a very important thing. It's a very good thing. But that doesn't mean that if you grow up and you grow older and you don't meet somebody that would be wonderful to meet and would have been good, that that's a bad thing. He's not saying that. My interpretation, you'll have to ask him actually, but my interpretation is he's strongly family oriented. But that doesn't mean if you don't have a family, there's something wrong with it.
Just one last point and then we'll move on. Just one of the bedrock principles of American life is one person, one vote. Senator J.D. Vance has suggested that someone who has children should have more votes than a person who does not have children. I just want to be clear here. Is that the position of your campaign?
Well, no, but it's not something I have ever heard before. I can tell you this. Right now you have illegal aliens coming into our country, many from prisons and many from mental institutions, and they want to give them votes. I don't think they should have votes. They came into our country illegally, and they're taking the vote away from all of the people in this room that have been here a long time, that have worked hard, that in many cases, and you'll see this happening, if I'm not elected, you're going to see it happen. If I am, you're not going to have any problem. But you're going to see it happening a long time. You're going to see the people in this room and people outside of this room are going to be losing their jobs to people that have come into this country illegally.
Mr. President, can we stay with just kind of the state of the race right now? Because I felt like that vice president question, candidate question was right in there with that. So let's talk about J.D. Vance for a little bit. He's had some stumbles out of the gate. I don't know if you're hearing what we hear as reporters, but it's been a tough couple of weeks.
I got to say this. There have been, according to the Associated Press, let me just stop, instances of they're claiming, and I'm going to put this here, the Associated Press saying that there have been cases of non-citizens casting ballots, but they are extremely rare. And those who have looked into these cases say that often involve legal immigrants who mistakenly believe they have the right to vote.
Okay, but the point of the exercise is that somebody who's not present in the room has been saying she's going to make sure that they quickly get the chance to vote. And also you have to look at New York and California that are trying to get them to be able to vote in local elections without citizenship, and to expand that into a quick access to be able to vote in federal elections. And the other problem is if you bifurcate a ballot between the ballot at a polling place that people who are non-citizens can vote on and the ones who are citizens, you come up with all sorts of extra avenues of corruption, because how do you police that? You see, that's the pragmatic situation. So that's a consideration, but it is what it is. And I think they're bouncing back between, what is it? You're talking about Vance's personal views? Well, I think actually, I know my position as a parent now, a grandparent, is a lot different than it was when I was a single guy. I had different values or priorities, let's put it that way, when I was single that I don't have or didn't have after I became a parent. You see, you have a vested interest in somebody else besides you. So when you start plotting what you're doing, it's like, if you've got children, it's a real thing. You have to accommodate them in what you do with your money in terms of providing support. If you don't have children, it's hypothetical, and you never get in the mode of thinking about what am I going to do to put this aside so I get the baby clothes, the Similac, or the feeding the formula, or getting to the doctor, or taking to Disney World, or whatever in the hell you're trying to do. So those are whole different things that become reality once you become a parent. And when you are running the country as a chief executive officer, it really helps if those things are in your mind, in the forefront of your mind, rather than just as hypotheticals. I noticed you've seen this on the bench. Judges that don't have experience in trying don't make good trying cases, as lawyers don't make very good judges. You got to have experience doing these things in order to understand them. So if you have a country full of people where most of the adults in the country will become parents or already are parents, then it would help if you had somebody that is cognizant of what that means, who's running stuff, rather than somebody for whom it's only hypothetical. That's like, how do you select a jury? You've run into people that have never selected a jury, so selecting a jury becomes a hypothetical exercise that generally isn't carried out too well compared to somebody that's done it. Or when they prepare for a trial, take that into context. That's what we're talking about here.
Right. So let me finish the video.
Why did you choose J.D. Vance?
I'm not too impressed with it, though.
Why
did you choose him? And I'm having a hard time hearing too. I know everybody out there can, but it's hard.
I'll tell you why. I chose him because he's a very strong believer in work and the working man and woman, and especially the working man and woman who have been treated very unfairly, because you have many of them in this room. But you have many of those people, they were treated very unfairly. They worked very hard and they were treated unfairly. He wrote the book that became a bestseller. The movie became a smash hit. He's a very smart guy without the benefit of having a family that has contacts, like a father that was well connected. He got into Yale Law School. He graduated in 2 years from Ohio State, summa cum laude. I mean, you take a look at, his career has been an amazing career. He started off at a level with a difficult family situation, very difficult with the mother and the father and everything else. He ends up going to Yale Law School and was one of the top students, became the head of the law journal. I mean, it's an amazing thing. He's a 4-year, he was in the military with great distinction for 4 years, got out, went into business, became successful in business, very successful in business, actually, did public offerings and other things. And I have to believe in that. I mean, he's somebody that was born in a rough situation. Most of the people know that situation because it was very well documented in his book. And I have a lot of respect for somebody that can get into Yale and become one of the best students in Yale, that meets a young woman at Yale who was also outstanding, and they get married, they have a beautiful family. But he had he's made himself an amazing life. He then goes to Ohio, lives in Ohio, and he had my endorsement. That helped. But he wins the Senate. He becomes a United States Senator. So he's a United States Senator. So, and so, Harris, like I respect you for your success, I respect people for their success.
The reason I asked the question is because the last time you and I sat and talked was the day that you were shot. We'd been together for much of that day. You left to go to Butler, Pennsylvania, and we didn't know what was next. Yeah. And 2 days after that,
I cannot understand your microphone.
I know it is really hard for me to understand you too.
I can understand you perfectly.
Because she's closer.
I can understand you.
Happy to hear that, sir.
But I can't
really
understand, Harris.
I have a few more questions.
Because of the distance, and the mics are really in lousy shape, but I cannot understand
are you
asking a question?
what you're saying.
So what I wanted to say was the last time we spoke, you said some words that were prophetic because I asked you who you wanted to choose for vice president.
Yeah.
And you said normally it really wouldn't matter what they would bring, you choose somebody that you think has a future, that sort of thing. But you said these words 3.5 hours before an attempted assassination on your life. You told me that bad things happen, Harris. And that's why this decision is important this time. Bad things happen. You said it twice. When you look at J.D. Vance, is he ready on day one?
Does he what?
Ready on day one, if he has to be.
I've always had great respect for him and for the other candidates too. But I will say this, and I think this is well documented. Historically, the vice president in terms of the election does not have any impact. I mean, virtually no impact. You have 2 or 3 days where there's a lot of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down, and it's all about the presidential pick. Virtually never has it mattered. Maybe Lyndon Johnson mattered for different reasons of what we're talking about, not for vote reasons, but for political reasons, other political reasons. But historically, the choice of a vice president makes no difference. You're voting for the president, and you can have a vice president every way, and I think J.D. is, I think that all of them would have been, but you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You vote. If you like me, I'm going to win. If you don't like me, I'm not going to win. J.D. Vance.
I'm going to get my J.D. Vance. He, has a lot of opinions about childless women like myself or divorced people like yourself. Do you think, well, I mean, my point
but at
is
least
here.
It was said in a friendly manner.
My point is, do you think the Republican Party is getting a little bit too judgy about people's lives when you think about abortion or when you think about what J.D. Vance is saying?
I don't think, look, I think
that was a shot at
the Democrat Party is really the one that has the problem. I think they're radical on abortion because they're allowing abortion in the 9th month. They're allowing the
But
death.
I think it's
They're
about
allowing
freedom,
the
right?
death of a baby after the baby is born, based on
Sir,
the
that is
governor of
illegal in
Virginia.
every state in the country.
Based on the governor of Virginia,
Executing a
they're
baby in
allowing the
every
death
state
of the
in the country
baby
is illegal.
after it's born.
It's a
They're
crime.
allowing abortions in the 8th and 9th month.
Well,
of
Democrats
pregnancy.
have denied.
I think they're right. And I think the Republican Party is actually much less. I think I've made them much less radical, perhaps. But the Republican Party, what we're doing is bringing it back to the states where everybody wanted it. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted abortion brought back. They didn't want Roe v. Wade in the federal government. They wanted it, everybody.
But the
wanted
majority
it
of
back.
Americans oppose
Excuse
Roe
me.
v. Wade being
They
overturned.
don't
Multiple
know
polls have
about
showed that,
this.
sir.
Right now, they're voting. It brought it back to the states. Now, I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions. Ronald Reagan believed with rape, incest, life of the mother. I do. I think most people do. I think most Republicans do also. But if you take a look, right now they're doing, it's an amazing thing. Out of the federal government, it's
1,
in
2,
states,
3,
and
4,
people are voting.
5, 6.
And I will say, Ohio
Testing.
let's call it a more liberal version, has been approved. Kansas, the same thing. A little
1,
bit
2,
surprising
3,
to a lot.
4, 5, 6.
Are you having trouble hearing me? Can you hear me? I don't know what's going on. Judge, can you hear me? Hear you.
And 1, 2, 3, 4.
I can hear you, Judge.
A lot of people, but the people are now voting, and it's taking this issue that's been going on for 52 years and has torn our country apart, and it's giving it to the people to vote on, and they're voting. And many states have already voted. Others are in the process.
I'm gonna text you, Judge, if you can't hear me.
I can hear now.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear now.
And it's bringing it back to the people and a vote of the people. And it's not at all radical. And again, you have to follow your heart. I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions. Most people believe in the 3 exceptions. Most Republicans believe in the exceptions. But they don't want to see an abortion in the 9th month or the 8th month. Almost everybody agrees to that. And they certainly don't want to see, in the case of the governor of Virginia, the former governor, I might add, who said, we set the baby aside and then we decide what to do. Meaning, what do? We execute the baby. That's a radical, horrible position. And some people want that. I don't want it. Most people don't.
Thank you. Can I just pivot really quickly to another question about, you brought up health, Harris. You're an active man. We see you golfing all the time. But if you win, you'll still be president at 82.
No.
Which is older than Biden is right now.
But not mentally. Look, mentally.
Here's the question.
He's shot. But most people.
Would you consider?
Most people. I know many people in their 80s and their 90s that are in great shape. Some of our greatest leaders. You look at throughout the world history, the greatest leaders. Some of the greatest leaders in the world were in their 80s.
But here's the question: would you consider stepping down if you felt that your health was declining, or would you?
Oh, absolutely.
And who would make,
I think I'd know.
How would you make that decision?
I think I'd know. Look, if I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated
Oh my
me,
goodness.
and I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That wasn't a question. She
Sir,
didn't ask me a question. She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I repeated your
answer
statement,
the
sir,
question.
actually.
You said you would. You would.
Oh,
make that
absolutely.
decision
If I
to step
thought
down.
that I was failing in some way, I want people to be sharp. I'll go a step further. I want anybody running for president to take an aptitude test, to take a cognitive test. I think it's a great idea. And I took 2 of them and I aced them. I took 2 of them. But let me ask.
Yeah.
I would like to have people running for president. And I don't mean because they're 75 or 85. I think anybody running, I'd like to do it. People say it's not constitutional. I would like to have something passed where you can do it. I think we should know. I mean, I've watched what's happened in the last couple of years under this gentleman, and our country is a mess. We have inflation. We have the millions of people falling in. We have Afghanistan, which was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. What he has done to our country, and her too, what they've done to our country, she has been a horrible vice president. She's considered the worst vice president in the history of our country.
Don't mean to interrupt you, but would you consider taking the cognitive test?
Mr. President,
I would love to.
I will say this. Let me stop right quick, Judge. If my understanding is correct, doesn't Ms. Harris have the lowest vice presidential approval rating
ever? And she is below even a president. Her ratings are even below Spiro Agnew's, who was Nixon's vice president after he got convicted in Maryland and started serving time, and after he did some federal time. So even after that, her ratings are horrible. She withdrew after the second primary when she was running against Biden in 2015. So she didn't even get out of single digits there. So she just dropped out. So they picked her because she was a zero. In other words, she's a figurehead, a DEI, which is exactly what Biden said.
What about, let me ask you this though, they're saying that her approval rating has gone up and is even beating Trump in the polls. Like Newsweek, for instance, has this point saying that her approval rating surges as J.D. Vance's falters, according to Newsweek. You give any credence to that?
No.
Why not?
Propaganda 172B, Propaganda 172B, lie about what somebody's doing and falsely inflate their ratings so that people will think they can get on board with a winner. That's what they're doing. Her approval ratings are just as bad. They're talking about she's all this and that and everybody's supporting her. I have encountered very few people outside of Generation Z who support this woman, because I see women who have had the experience of working for other women in life and say they never want a man boss. They look at it and say they don't want a woman negotiating for them where there's somebody carrying around the nuclear football with the launch codes. They don't want somebody that has mood swings. They don't want somebody that has to worry about getting her beauty on just for appearance's sake and having to put makeup on before they can get out in the public and make an appearance. They don't want somebody doing what they do. They'll tell you that. And it's like, I don't want to see anybody trying to play mama either if he's got something else, another kind of appendage. There are things women do that men can't do and things men do that women can't do. They make excellent administrators, but you have to understand this is somebody that might be calling on other people to follow them to hell and back because it's something that needs to be done. This is also our war leader. This is our chief negotiator. This is somebody that is not going to get someone who's polite. You're going to find that maybe they're dealing with somebody in the Middle East, one of the Arabian countries or an Islamic country. They're not going to find somebody particularly friendly to what they are. And you can have all kinds of irate reactions about, well, they ought to get ready for it. Well, they might not. So what are you going to do? And the other thing is if you're talking about right now, we have to talk about what we just got through talking about, because that becomes what we will be talking about in a minute or two, because that's why we say it now. You're not going to get anywhere with the diplomats and strong arm types in the rest of the world.
All right. Let me finish the video. We got like 7 minutes left. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to play Roland Martin clip.
Yeah, well,
I've
let's
already
get rolling.
taken 2 of them, but I'll do it again.
Mr. President, how do you intend to?
I suggested, Harris, that let's take one. I said, Joe and I will go and take a cognitive test. Now, I'd do it with her too. I would do it with her also. You know what? She failed her law exam. She didn't pass her law exam, so maybe she wouldn't pass the cognitive test.
Mr. President,
Are you saying she wouldn't pass?
She
Just to be
passed
clear,
the bar
giving you a
exam.
fact.
to be clear, you
She
don't think
failed it on her
how do
first
you
try.
intend,
She
and
didn't
look,
pass
What
the
say?
bar exam.
I said
she didn't
she
think
failed
she
the
would
bar
pass
on
it,
her
and
first try, but she passed it subsequently.
Well, yeah, there is that. The other thing, too, as I told you, I've talked to some doctors and clinical psychologists that say her word salad is the product of early onset dementia. And that's a worse situation than it is with Biden. She's 60 years old. And, you know, you get my age, you run into people who are 90 something and sharp as a tack, and people that start losing it in their late 50s. They start drifting and they can't focus. So that is something he's offering. Let's go get the cognitive test, see who comes out sharpest.
And I don't know what happened. Maybe she passed it.
She did pass it.
There's a man over here. I think he must work.
Mr. President, I would love to ask you about January 6th. You've called yourself the candidate of law and order.
Yeah.
When Time Magazine asked you if you would consider pardoning all the rioters, you said, yes, absolutely.
Sure.
You called them patriots. 140 police officers were assaulted that day. Their injuries included broken bones. At least one officer lost an eye. One had 2 cracked ribs, 2 smashed spinal discs. Another had a stroke. Were the people who assaulted those 140 officers, including those I just mentioned, patriots who deserve pardons?
Well, let me bring it back to modern day. Like about 5 days ago, we had an attack on the Capitol, a horrible attack on the Capitol. You saw the people that were protesting and spraying these incredible monuments, bells, lions, all these magnificent limestone and granite with red paint, red spray paint that will never actually come off, especially in the limestone. It will never, I'm a builder, I know about this stuff. It'll never, you'll see it in 100 years from now. They viciously attacked our government. They fought with police. They fought with them much more openly than I saw on January 6th. What's going to happen to those people? What's going to happen? Yeah. What's going to happen? Absolutely, I would.
You would.
If they're innocent, I would pardon them. And by the way,
it's locking up or freezing on me.
The people that happened to them.
In that video,
well, they.
Okay, they kicked me out. We're back. Let me finish the video. We almost at the end. Right when we at the end, we get trouble.
They shot her in the face. You know, nobody died that day. You do know that. But people died in Seattle. Nobody died, but people died in Minneapolis. You know, people died in Minneapolis. And nothing happens, and nobody ever talks, and nothing happens to those people. But you went after the J6 people with a vengeance. And I'll tell you what about the cops that were, and I'm all for the police, as you know, but what about the police that are ushering everybody into the Capitol? Go in, go in, go in. What about that? Look, nothing is perfect in life, but you have people from Minneapolis, you have people just from 5 days ago in Washington, D.C., they were having fistfights and fighting with the police. They were spraying and destroying, they were desecrating our monuments in Washington, D.C. 5 days ago, and nothing happened to them. And you can't have two systems of justice. That's why they went after me as a political opponent, because they felt they couldn't win without doing that. And we're going to win our cases and we're going to be vindicated. But I have to spend a lot of time on that and money. That's what they want. After the election, they won't care. Although in my case, I think they probably will, because the hatred is pretty deep. But I'll tell you, they went after me as a political opponent. That's never happened in our country before. And it sets a terrible, terrible precedent.
What do you do on day one if you win? What's your first thing?
What do? I close the border. And I do two things, because I can do a lot of things simultaneously. I close the border. We don't want people coming. We want people to come in, Harris, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. They have to come in legally. We want people. I want people to come into our country. but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. So when you say, what do I do? That, and I drill, baby, drill. I bring energy way down. I bring interest rates down. I bring inflation way down so people can buy bacon again, so people can buy a ham sandwich again, so that people can go to a restaurant and afford it. Because right now, people can't buy food. Your grocery bills are up 40, 50, 60%, right? She's agreeing to me. Oh, she's agreeing. Thank you. I like you very much.
Mr. President, I think we are.
But it's true. Your grocery bills are up. And then they're mandating that you buy an all-electric car. You know, Elon Musk endorsed me, and he's a friend of mine. He's a good guy. He's a smart guy. But I'm against everybody having an electric car, okay? I'm very much against that. You have to be able to, if you want a hybrid or if you want a gasoline-propelled car. But, you know, we have more liquid gold, gasoline, oil, under our feet than any other country, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, more than any other country. I want to use it. I want to use what we have. I want to bring down prices, bring down costs, and I also have to stop the invasion. And remember, they're taking your jobs. These people coming in are taking your jobs.
Project 2025.
I think we have to leave it there by the Trump team.
All right.
So leave it. That is the last word. Thank you so much, Mr. Trump, for coming.
Yeah,
coming
they
today and joining
started
us.
late, so everybody was upset right when they wanted to get
They've
to
been
Project
tough.
2025,
Thank you, everybody, very much. Great
Thank you,
honor.
Mr.
and they didn't get to it.
And people will email about details.
So they didn't get to it. But now I want to play this right quick. And someone asked about Matrice Richardson, that case in California. Can that be reopened? If it's a homicide, there's no statute of limitations, so anybody can open it anytime they're dealing with a homicide or death of a person. I'll answer that. But that was a state issue unless they can find some type of civil rights issue or so forth. The feds can even take over. But I want you to watch Roland Martin, a judge, and I want you to give your opinion. So Roland was talking with this guy who had his own media company and got upset, and he said that Trump lied about the HBCUs thing, and also why Kamala Harris wasn't at the NABJ at the forum. I believe she was in Atlanta.
Wasn't that the same place?
Or at Houston? If it was either in Atlanta or she was in Houston. I think the next day, if I'm not mistaken, she addressed what Trump had to say at the forum. But I think she was eulogizing. Was she eulogizing Sheila Jackson Lee? Or was at her funeral?
I have no idea. Point of the exercise is that she is not going to want to confront him within 10 yards, 20 yards, or in the same room. I think she's talking around. I don't think she'll do well in the debate. She didn't before. I believe there's a lady that tore her up and completely
She spoke at
derailed
the
her.
Sigma. She was in Houston. I'm sorry, for the Sigma Gamma Rho. She was speaking for the Sigma Gamma Rho sorority.
Yeah, well, that was for them. This other one was for the nation. Shows the priorities. But the thing of it was, what was that woman that was debating her in the Democratic primary back in
Tulsi
20?
Gabbard?
Yeah, Tulsi tore her a new ass. It was embarrassing. She ranked her out so bad. So she needs to. Anyway, let's hear Roly Poly here.
Yeah, she needs to.
He lied about, first of all, he lied about in terms of abortion in 9 months. That was a flat out lie. He lied about HBCU funding. Because the reality is, for 3 consecutive years, Donald Trump submitted a budget cutting HBCU funding.
That's not what you're talking about.
Excuse me.
By the way, that's a lie.
Excuse me. The program that he cited about HBCU funding, guaranteeing funding, his budget zeroed that program out. It was under Bush.
No, it didn't. That's a damn lie. That was Biden that did
Congressman
that.
Alma Allens of
Quit lying.
North Carolina who put it back in.
How were you given that seat today?
I'm sorry. Let me say it to you.
Why were you in that seat today? Who put you in that seat
Let me
today?
say it to you again.
But that's not what you were talking about when you interrupted the speech. You
say
kept saying he
Let me
lied,
say
but
it, and I'm telling you the
that's not what
lies.
you're talking about.
Let me say
That's
to
not
you
what you said
again.
during the speech. I was listening to the speech, and I was listening
First of all,
to
it wasn't a speech.
interrupt
Here's the deal.
the 3
Here's the deal.
panelists and the president.
Here's the deal.
You were not one of the panelists. If you were the journalist here, why were you up there asking questions?
We have a journalist up here every year. We've been around 49 years. So
but you specifically, why were you not on that stage?
Let me be real clear.
You were just in the audience screaming live?
Let me be real clear.
From row one?
Let me be real clear.
Who put you in row one?
Because you're cute and you get your little video. So you're talking to somebody who has far more history in this organization than you've ever been. So
I'm not a member. That's true. I'm definitely not an NABJ member.
When you're not a member and you have no understanding of our history or our membership, you don't realize founders are sitting here. You don't realize that four presidents are sitting here.
Well, you still try to
interrupt from the first row.
Let me say it again.
That's not what journalists do.
Oh, actually, you have to.
You're not a panelist.
Are you a journalist?
I think I am. More so than you.
Are you a
Because I'm
journalist?
asking real questions right now. You're
Are you a journalist? Are you a journalist? Why are you a journalist? What's your organization?
Because I'm asking questions.
No. What's your media organization?
I'm independent. I'm asking you
What's
questions.
your media organization?
Oh, you need to be in a media organization?
Well, if you're going to be a journalist, you have to be with a media entity.
So right, you need to be paid off by big corporate media?
Actually, what's your media entity?
Who do you work for?
I work for me. I own my company.
Oh, really? So you're an independent journalist?
No.
Isn't that what I just said?
No, actually, but I named
this
the
doesn't
company.
make any sense.
It's called Black Star Network. What's your company?
The what?
What's your company?
What's the state media
What's
company?
your company?
The company. It's called the company.
Oh, it's called the company?
It's called my company.
Okay, that's cute.
That's great.
Are you the CEO?
Are
you the CEO?
Maybe.
No,
listen,
are you the
why
CEO?
were you not on that stage?
Are you the CEO?
I think we're done here.
Are you the CEO or
This
you an
is a
employee?
ridiculous
Yes, you're right, because you walked over here. Are you the CEO or you an employee?
You were in my ear screaming.
No, actually, I was
That's
in your
something you're
ear.
not even talking
You were across the barrier. First of all, we just make it. I'm gonna talk to members. You're not
Nice
touch
to
me.
meet you.
Do not touch me.
Thank you.
Move your last one. Don't touch me. I'm done with
trying
you.
to shake your hand.
No,
That's what gentlemen do.
no, actually.
He got embarrassed.
You tell him move your ass alone.
Well, Roly Poly was out of order. He wasn't on the stage and questioned men. Why wasn't there somebody, a black man, up on the stage?
And they got some people who are happy Roland got in on this guy. I guess this guy's name is Justin Wells, who he has stuff dealing with Tucker Carlson, who I'm not a fan of, but
well, I don't think Roly did too well on that one.
No.
The guy just asked him, why weren't you up on stage? Why are you screaming in my ear with what are you trying to do?
Right. Yeah, Roland Martin. Well, listen, I've told people and I've met Roland Martin before. The dude is a fucking jerk.
He is a jerk.
He's a jerk. And I don't care. He can talk black all he wants. The dude is a jerk. Just the way he talks to people. Like he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. We know he's been eating it. I know that much.
He's an egotistical jerk. You're absolutely right. I have a political science major. I said, well, I do too.
Yeah.
So what's your point?
And he talks down.
I've been a lot more successful in life than you've been. So
he
what's
talks
your
down
point?
to his guest. He doesn't let his guests talk. He talks ugly to him. I mean, I remember just a few weeks back, I saw a clip going viral. There was a black man talking about Biden stepping down. It was after the debate. And Roland was talking to this grown man who's got to be in his 60s. Like, no, interrupting. That ain't going to happen. Biden ain't stepping down. This is stupid. Stop talking about this. This is like, I mean, while a man is talking, and look what happened. Biden stepping down.
He wanted to come back on one thing. Yeah, you got fired. I said, no, I didn't get fired. I retired. I was over 65 years old. Been doing it for 15 years. Got a nice paycheck going for the thing. So residuals and all that other stuff. I'm retired, fool.
And he
What's
blocked
your problem?
me. And he blocked me from Instagram, which is probably a great because I called him a prick.
He is a prick.
He's
an arrogant, egotistical prick with an inferiority complex. That's what he is.
No.
Just like those clowns on the Breakfast Club. What did Arnold Schwarzenegger call them? Girly men.
Yeah. And so he also went in explaining why Kamala Harris wasn't at the NBGA. Let me just hear this right quick. But she was at Sigma Gamma Rho. I know that much. And that's what I read.
Buford here. I want to ask you, Roland, what's your thoughts on Vice President Kamala not showing up to the NABJ to speak to?
First of all, let's walk through it. Vice President Kamala Harris is in Atlanta on Tuesday. She's speaking at Sigma Gamma today in Houston. Thursday, she's speaking at the funeral Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And then Friday, she gets with her team over the weekend, speaking to Vice President. So it's called a busy schedule. I totally understand it. I get it. She offered, the campaign offered her to speak to us virtually. NABJ said no. That to me is nonsense. We all do interviews via satellite, FaceTime, Skype, Zoom. And so you can't get option A, you get option B, because you still have an opportunity to address it. That was a mistake on our leadership's part. They failed us by not accepting that alternative.
I think she just copped out because she was scared.
Yeah, Judge. All right. Yeah, just need to. Yeah, we're back. What you said? She copped out.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I'm here. Judge. Judge, we can hear you.
Okay, damn. Anyway, I think it was a cop out. She didn't want to be in the same room with Trump. That's what it was.
Probably so. And they said, I mean, she could have done it via satellite or Zoom or StreamYard, anything like that would have been good. She could have challenged him. Yeah.
Well, you know, she wants to play that pearls and bucks thing. That's apparent. Chucks and pearls. Yeah, I guess that's more important.
Yeah.
And now that she's
YouTube is messing with the stream.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. They always do that. See, if you let them in, that's what you're going to get. The censorship. This is Big Brother 1984, Orson Welles. This is Animal Farm, Orson Welles. See, these kind of things have been predicted, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to use the ways of fascism to impose themselves, censor what people can hear, and propagandize and tell the big lie. Martin kept talking about a lie. What he was saying was a lie, because what Trump was saying about the HBCUs, I was remembering when
Oh gosh. It looks like they're doing something. Judge is working on that McDonald's Wi-Fi. What's going on? That's supposedly a picture. That's Willie Brown with Kamala Harris in the 90s. Yeah, Trump was fooling around too. He cheated on his wife. Yeah. So I just put this up, and Laura Loomer had that up and has this on.
testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Testing 1. Okay.
You
can hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
I can hear you.
I can't hear you too well, though.
Oh, you can't? How about now?
I hear you now.
All right. Sometimes you come in and come out. Oh, yeah. Laura Loomer, somebody got a picture of her. That's Kamala with Willie Brown.
What am I looking at?
That's Willie Brown and Kamala Harris. Somebody had that on X.
Oh, okay. It's a small picture from on my screen. Yep.
Okay. I just happened to look on it. I wasn't trying to even look at it, but somebody put that saying he got a kiss from Kamala Harris on this was in 95. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, they were dating. So
there was somebody posted on X that they worked in the DA's office up there, and they knew about the affair that there was going on with this married man. So, see, it kind of got in the way. Everybody, since the guy was the mayor, they just sort of let it ride rather than her being required to do her work. So, it must be interesting to have a privileged situation through your connections.
yeah. Judge, do you well, I don't have too much more to comment on or wrap it up, but I was going to ask you one thing. If you could briefly explain the One West Bank.
Yeah. What happened is One West Bank was a creature of George Soros, the billionaire. Mnuchin was the CEO, and you know him from...
He was a Treasury Secretary.
Yeah, Treasury Secretary under Obama. Well,
under Trump too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, for a little while. So these appointments overlap. Now, what happened was One West Bank was deep in the middle of these bundled mortgages and the scam that they were running. I knew three of my neighbors where I was living out in California. I was in a rural area, had a ranch, and they were losing their properties because of the mortgage fraud. And 5,200 some counts of indictments were returned against One West Bank and Mnuchin, who became the Treasury Secretary. They were in San Diego County, San Joaquin County, Orange County, LA County, Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, in other words, all over the state. So they financed Kamala Harris being elected to Attorney General for the state of California. To make a long story short, soon as she got in with their support, what she did was consolidated all 5,200 indictments and had them dismissed. And a few weeks later, Soros sold One West Bank for, I think it was $4.2 billion and made a tidy profit off of it. And he'd been involved in mortgage fraud scams all across the country, from Maryland to the West Coast down to Florida. So that was the scam she got in. And then as a payoff for that, they wound up financing her run for U.S. Senator. So she's in, and she got elected as the first Indian senator from the state of California, after being elected as the first Attorney General of California, first Indian district attorney for San Francisco. And Willie Brown had done a lot to help her out.
Mm-hmm.
So he set her up with the connections, made the introductions, and she got what she wanted. And she got the big folk, Soros and everybody else coming in. She got, 10 years ago, she married a rich Hollywood Jewish lawyer and adopted his grown kids. I'd call them grown since they were either in high school or high school graduates, apparently. So what has she done on her own where she hasn't been sponsored? That's what I like to see. I like these self-made people.
Right. And so and just to clarify with that from the research I had, she had an opportunity to prosecute One West Financial in 2013 when she was still before she joined the Senate as AG for these predatory loans that targeted Black and brown families.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't
she didn't do anything. Then she put 1,200 Black women in jail because Apparently, what happened is their children went truant. Some of them, in defense, said, well, I dropped my child off on the front steps of the school. I didn't know that they had disappeared. Nobody told me. So she was putting people in jail. My former in-laws had a favorite liquor store that was black owned up there in the Richmond area, which was in her jurisdiction, and it kept getting robbed. So her resolution was not to catch the bandits or prosecute them. She moved to get the liquor store declared a public nuisance and closed down. Was a loss to the neighborhood in terms of the business aspects. You got this thing in San Francisco where she was giving out the stiffest recommendations for simple possession of marijuana in the whole United States. And these were young black men that were doing it. They had to pay one guy, I think it was $13.1 million in damages because he was wrongfully kept in prison for 6 or 7 years because she would not release exculpatory evidence until the state Supreme Court ordered her to do so. And there were many black men who were ready to be released, and she blocked them from being released because she wanted them to fight fires for free. So she's not above, and when I call it, that's enslavement when the person's entitled to be released and there's no legitimate reason to keep him in custody except for his labor. That sounds an awful lot like slavery to me. And that's not inconsistent with our ancestors. And I'd make this observation. She does not get related to the slavers through some slave ancestor who was raped or taken advantage of. She just comes free and clear from the free side of the slave family, where, as I mentioned earlier, her ancestor got 11 million pounds from the English crown for the cost of the many slaves that he was working on his plantations. And that's in her background. In other words, a slaver, several slavers. So what do we have here? Is she using that hereditary thing, the DNA, the slaver that's in her DNA to control the Negroes? I think she is. And then it turns out that through her mother's side, there was some white in the mother's side again, and that turned out to be somebody related to Joe Biden. So she's distantly related to him. And it turns out he owned slaves. And by the way, there was a study done where they looked at all of the representatives and senators in U.S. Congress and all of the living U.S. presidents, and it turned out every single living U.S. president, including Barack Obama, with the exception of Donald Trump, is a descendant of slave owners, which I find interesting. So that's Bush, Obama, that's Biden, and then there was Vice President Dick Cheney and Vice President candidate Sarah Palin, who is a cousin of the whole bunch. And now we have Kamala Harris, and her ancestors were slave owners. So
what about Trump?
Trump has the only one that does not have any slaveholders in his ancestors. They were from Scotland, and actually they immigrated after slavery was over. So he's the only one. And like I said, he used to be the favorite of all the rap artists and all of the black entertainers and celebrities and black politicians, and black folk used to love to hang around with him until he got identified with being anti-rainbow. And then all of a sudden he became the boogeyman, and they told a lot of lies about him. A lot of them come through Roland Martin. You heard Roland lie right here today. He wanted to badmouth him about what he said for SBCUs, but I remember when that came out, and I back-checked it. I looked at the facts and figures and what were published, and yeah, he's right. I know some deans in black law school, black colleges and universities. And they said that was absolutely right. Trump was dumping money into them. They hadn't had that kind of financial largesse since 1968. So that's no lie.
Yeah, very interesting. I'll make on this last point. A lot of Republican presidents, for some reason, they have a special relationship with HBCUs where they give monies to them. So, and Trump actually is an independent.
He's not a
he was a
not a
Democrat at one
traditional.
time. Right.
Yeah, he was a staunch Democrat. He financed a lot of Democratic candidates, worked for them. That's what he was. But he gave a famous interview way back when with Oprah. He said if he ever ran for president, he'd probably run as a Republican because they would probably fall for certain things. See, he's not really Republican. And what you've got is an interesting situation. MAGA, Make America Great Again, is a nascent third political party that's already founded. And if they can get somebody in as president, they'll be running. So we will have three options, not just two. There are other parties, but they can't get on the ballot elsewhere because they don't have the money on deposit that's required in certain states, nor do they have this percentage of supporters within a state to get on the ballots. Cause the state to pay for the money to running the primaries and stuff. I'll say this, the main problem with what I'm looking at as a political scientist is that if you always vote for one party, no matter what they do, and always vote against another party, no matter what they do, neither party has any incentive to do anything special for you. Because one won't get your vote no matter what they do, and the other one isn't going to lose it no matter what they do. So black folk, unlike every other ethnic group in this country's history, seem to be fixedly loyal like dogs to one given party. And you have to remember the Democratic Party was chartered the beginning of the second decade of the 19th century. And its purpose was to protect and spread slavery. The Republican Party was chartered in 1851, and its specific mandate was for abolition, in other words, ending slavery in the United States. They got captured by big business somewhere along the line, and they started losing the common man. And what happened in the late 1950s, 1960, when Democrat John F. Kennedy was running for president, he called up all of the Democrat sheriffs in the South and said, back off of King, give him some slack. Nixon chose not to do that. He could have, but the Democrat running for the White House was in the same party as the sheriff locking up the civil rights leaders or demonstrators, so he asked him to give him some slack. That caught a lot of black people into the web. And then when they started pushing civil rights, that was good. Kennedy died. Black folk had a panic about, oh God, we got this southerner from Texas. Everything is over. All war is up. Oh, whoa, all is going to hell. And LBJ gave this thing and said, he's going to surprise people because now he represents everybody in the United States. And some of them learned that when he was in Texas, he set up a private school where he taught blacks and Hispanics how to write and read. And he registered a bunch of them to vote, which is how he got his first office. He got mad because the sheriff killed his dog. And he did what he did. He was crude, but he was probably the most effective Senate majority leader in the history of the country. The only one that could actually run the Senate. He contrived to get a strong civil rights bill in 1964, which I explained earlier. He did by the brilliant expedient of having it put out as a military bill, and he used to threaten the Southerns. He said, I told you could vote against these niggers last year, but this year you're going to give them what they want, or I'm going to make you look like a commie-loving bastard to your constituents. See, he was like that, and he did something that I think Biden probably learned from. After the NAM was going on in 1967 and 68, the country was in chaos, and he said, as a result of my failures to get this in order, he said, I refuse to seek and I refuse to accept the nomination of my party for the office of president. And he said that way back so people could get an opportunity to line up and see who was going to come in. Now, I think what they did was on purpose to wait till the last moment. The Democrats forbade any debates, so essentially Biden was being unopposed for the nomination, but they waited till the last moment. So there were no opportunities to schedule a primary. So Kamala Harris, who failed horribly back when she was running against Biden for the primary, in the primary session back in 2017, 2019, excuse me, she did horribly. And now she's going to get the nomination from, 3,200 delegates, about a third of whom are super delegates who can override everyone. So that's not going to be much of a broad base in deciding who's going to be a major party's presidential candidate. So they picked somebody who was weak so she could serve exclusively as a figurehead and bring in the black women when they got bamboozled by the lies she was telling about what she was. It's a bad thing. That doesn't sound very democratic to me. That sounds more like something out of Nazi Germany. In other words, we pick who you get, and we control what you hear, and we can feed you any stories we want, and we can impose on you, block you, destroy you, persecute you with lawfare, with totally baseless criminal charges, so we can bankrupt you and disable you from being able to be an opponent. Hey, it gets interesting.
Judge, I got one quick question. I want to ask you. What do you think of the third-party candidates like Robert F. Kennedy as an independent? Just curious.
Robert F. Kennedy is still a Democrat. He's a disgruntled Democrat, and I don't think he's going to do anything much against his party, the party of his ancestors. And that goes all the way back to his great-grandfather, Joe Kennedy in Boston, who was a gangster. If you want to see Joe Kennedy, there is Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks, and Marlowe with Liam Eason.
Joe Kennedy is his grandfather.
Okay, grandfather. That's right. He's the son of, his grandfather.
Bobby Kennedy's son, right.
Yeah. So his grandfather, Joe Kennedy, was a gangster, organized crime figure who refined himself and became American ambassador to England. If you watch the movie Marlowe with Liam Neeson, you will find him referred to as the crooked person running the con game in Hollywood. They mention Alfred Hitchcock by name in there. And if you watch Road to Perdition with Tom Hanks, the Irish gangster that he is a hitman for is in fact based on Joe Kennedy. And Joe Kennedy's job was to enforce things on the docks and in the warehouses in Boston, and also keep the black folk out of the job market down there. It was lucrative labor for somebody, so they didn't want black folks to have it. So I guess him being a killer and a gangster, it goes back around. That's family karma that's negative. So maybe that's why all of that stuff that happened to the Kennedy family happened to it. So is what it is, and he's a staunch generational Democrat. I don't think he's going to go too far, but I think Trump, who nominally was a Democrat, now actually an independent, who has got his own party, MAGA, is probably the best hope for the country because he's a boss. He's somebody that doesn't use the office to get rich like the rest of them do. He's got his own money and his own resources. He's a man. He doesn't buy into the rainbow cult that they're trying to impose as a secular religion or faith on the country. And he won't take any shit from anybody. So I like that. He will talk crude, but I mean, any man that says he doesn't talk like that in the locker room or with his homeboys when they're out at a bar getting a drink or something.
All right, we lost Judge Joe. I'm gonna try and get him back to just say goodbye to everyone. We've been at this for 3 hours, so I'm gonna try and wrap it up. But what he's stating is he's stating his support for Trump. Now, I just want to say briefly, I get Judge Joe is back, I think. But I want to point out, I'm actually on the YouTube page. We had over 1,000 people that were watching. That's the numbers I'm talking about. They couldn't, they had trouble. They tried to keep us away. They tried to keep it down, but we had the numbers tonight. 874 votes have come in. 94% of you.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Now, you've got somebody who's essentially an independent who's trying to set up a third political party that stems from the Republican Party, but is not. That's probably the best hope black folk have for getting an independent pathway to getting political respect again, because the Black Caucus is not really a caucus for black people. It's a caucus for the rainbow. If you look at the membership in the Liberty Caucus, which is for the LGBTQIA, that's their political acumen being shown. It's great for politics. They're doing it well, but just about every single member of the Black Caucus is a member of the Liberty Caucus, and they do more for the Liberty Caucus. And if you step back and look at it, most of the black officials in D.C. appear, when you look at it the right way, of just using their color to get elected to represent the rainbow, not to represent the people that resemble them.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a consideration that we should take into respect. Like reparations, you and I have talked, I think I really don't see a smooth pathway forward in terms of litigation because of statutes of limitations, principles, sovereign immunity, and that kind of thing. And I think about the only way you're going to get a realistic possibility is through legislative action in terms of an Enablement and Appropriations Act. But the Black Caucus is similarly indisposed to do something like that. There have been a significant number of them for at least 35 years, and they've done absolutely nothing except work to advance the interest of the Liberty Caucus, which is the LGBTQIA plus caucus. So who are they working for? And when you think of that, you have to put Cory Booker in there, most of the black representatives, and that includes Kamala Imhoff. And why, by the way, since you have Hillary Clinton, Sarah Palin, Nancy Pelosi, et cetera, does she insist on using her maiden name? Is she trying to keep us from realizing that she's got a Jewish husband? I mean, that's cool if you want to do that. No big deal. But I mean, why is she trying to hide this? What kind of image is she supposed to be putting out? You see, where are we going with this? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you know, funny you mentioned about reparations. There was a lawsuit that was brought in Oklahoma on the Tulsa race riots. I know the lawyer who did it, that they were bringing forward, and he was trying to do it under a nuisance ordinance or act in Oklahoma, and the Supreme Court of Oklahoma denied it.
Yeah.
But he tried.
He tried.
And I think those people should have gotten reparations for what happened in Tulsa. And, you know, if Biden wanted to, they could have rewarded something to them, but
they didn't.
Yeah.
But then still, he just can't award off the top of his head. There has to be a discretionary fund he could award from, and what would be due on a reasonable reimbursement for reparations. That kind of money just isn't available for discretionary disbursement. The problem, and I talked, Johnny Cochran and I have known each other since 1966. He was a UCLA alumnus. And we occasionally would talk about it. And the problem is that this real thing about, okay, if you are doing something, enslaving somebody, essentially you're committing a tort against them, right?
Correct.
Okay, now, what is the usual statute of limitations in America for taking action on a tort done to you? It's 1 year or 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how many years, 100 years, has it been since slavery was ended, or even Jim Crow, or you really had a live defendant in a discrimination action? You might be able to proceed against certain corporate entities, but
Well,
then again,
that's what I was going to say. Corporate entities that benefited from it, that made money.
yeah, but then the statute of limitations would apply. You can't wait 100 years to go sue somebody, assuming a natural person would be that long-lived. You got a 1 year statute of limitations on a tort. A lot of states have modified it to 2, some very few 3 years. So it's been a long time past 3 years to sue a fictional person for something he did decades ago or 150 years ago.
But Judge, you could add this too. For us, even after slavery, we still had to deal with the tort of Jim Crow.
Yeah, well, yeah.
When allowed to participate in elections and voting, and also even going into courthouses.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. But how long has it been since that's been strictly outlawed? And where in America can you prove that somebody kept somebody from going in a courthouse? It'd be kind of hard. Now, I can say in Memphis, but the statute of limitations ran when I got here back in the early 70s. The juvenile court hadn't been integrated even a year. I think it was just that 1 year after I got here, before I got here, that they had integrated and let black lawyers come in the courtroom and black defendants not have to wait out in the hallway. Yeah. I ran into some trouble with that. I went off on the son of a bitches down there. One non-judge lawyer who was appointed by a 6th grade dropout judge who wasn't permitted to hear cases. We had been having a 50-year-long war, so I wouldn't back down on this sister I was representing for free, so I wound up getting 5 days for contempt. But I mean, bottom line is that goes back to the first appearance I made down there when the judge, I think it was 1973, 74, he called me a nigger, you know, in open court. He thought I was on his docket, and I had to tell him I was there representing some people. So, I mean, you know, that would have been actionable, but how many years did I have to sue him? You see, that was 50 years ago. So my statute of limitations to sue him for violation of my civil rights or committing a tort, if you want to call it that way, with the conduct he was trying to treat black lawyers and other folk on in the courtroom, my statute of limitations is long past. So that was an action I had. I was 5 years old. My mother was librarian at Tuskegee Institute for this summer program. and she was fishing in the glove compartment. She loved her Coca-Cola. She handed me one sitting in the back seat. I was holding it on my knee while she was getting something out of the glove compartment. I think it was a DeSoto the old man was driving, and we passed by one of these sundown towns a little too early. And some clowns took 3 shots at the car. They were shooting at my old man. They didn't lead him enough, and the bullet went through the driver's side rear door and shattered the Coke bottle on my knee, went out the other side of the car. That was a tort, but that's been 71, 72 years ago. So do I have an action for that? Maybe I could wait until I was 18, but that's been, whoa, 50 years ago. No, hell, that's been 60 years ago. So how would I get a cause for action? I mean, LAPD used to jack everybody up. You were around young black man in Los Angeles in the 1960s. You had all kinds of causes of action. But do you think, it's been 55, 60 years since then? What happened to the statute of limitations? See, that's the problem with that.
Yeah.
But San Francisco tried to pass a reparations act, but they were lying to the people because, one, they didn't have the money, and two, California, I think, is 54% Hispanic now, 48% of the registered voters, or 46% of the registered voters are Hispanic, and they have ballot initiatives in California. You need, I think, 25,000 signatures statewide to get an issue on the ballot. And anytime they don't like something out there, they get to 25,000 signatures, put it on the ballot. And if they ever had reparations, I can guarantee you that the Hispanic community would get a ballot initiative, put it on the ballot. And since they are the majority of the residents, it ain't going anywhere.
No. They wouldn't support it.
No.
Judge.
So I have an idea I'm going to talk to you about, though, but I'm not going to publish it.
Oh, okay. Sure. Well, yeah, whenever you want to talk to me about it, we can. But this has been a great broadcast. We got to do it again. Now, I played, I'm Dana take off Thursdays again so I could have the judge, because I had over 1,000 people, over 1,034 people watching the live stream tonight, which is something it usually doesn't happen. We've been shadow banned, but thank you to all who have recently subscribed. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Make sure you do that. Also, if you have not, go to Amazon Kindle right now. Buy The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby. That was my book on what happened to Dr. Cosby in that kangaroo trial in 2018 and why his conviction was overturned. Everybody should read it. Judge Joe Brown has a copy of it and read it. Andrew Wyatt, who was Bill Cosby's spokesperson, endorsed it. So please go ahead and do that. And also check out Judge's barbecue seasoning. I'm sorry, seasoning.
Barbecue sauce, seasoning, and leeks. Chicken, beef, and vegan, Beyond Beef. Yeah, you can see it right back there. Amazon. Right. Order it.
Yeah, this is, I'm going to put up, Judge, I'm going to put up the page for the barbecue sauce here. Everybody can go to. And I even have my own Creole seasoning blends people can check out. I'm trying to get
it. It's good too.
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm trying to order a new batch and I can ship some out to people. So you can order it there. But we also are going to actually get it in stores. We're going to get some on Amazon. Yes, make sure you all subscribe. And look, thank you for the new subscribers. As y'all know, the channel is not monetized. As I stated, YouTube took my monetization in less than 1 month after they approved me. But what you can do is donate to the Cash App, the PayPal, or Zelle. If you like me for my time, pay me for my time. Ed Houston said, Judge Joe Brown for president.
Hey, thanks. And by the way, Facebook permanently banned me. I had maximum number of friends. but I'd never posted anything. And when I investigated, they banned me because they didn't like what I was posting on X. Ain't that something?
Yeah, they did that to Minister Farrakhan.
Mm-hmm. That's exalted company, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, Counselor, thank you. I will catch you later. But I did have a few novel ideas as to what to do about the reparations. It involves Article 1, Section 8, and also that thing, Article 6 in the Constitution, which would, let me just give a clue. It's if we sign some treaties to be, to an extent, guided by the UN, all right? That's part of the supreme law of the land. And following on to the law of nations, where reparations are certainly encouraged as a humanitarian issue, then that might give us the end to impose some obligation on the U.S. government to award the same kind of reparations that other nations have, as a custom, done to, say, Jewish survivors of the Holocaust and World War II, or in line with which we had, though there were identifiable persons, what happened with the Japanese internment camp situation. There might be some way of extrapolating a way to get in. I'll talk to you about it. I just had some thoughts and wrote them down. But anyway, I'm not sure it's would work, but it's a thought exercise. Anyway.
All right, Judge.
All right.
I'm great, y'all. Thank you, Judge Joe Brown. You know we're doing good when they trying to kick us out of my own live stream. So they didn't want to hear this, but we got that. Someone wanted to ask right quick, did you know Bishop E.B. Stewart in Church of God in Christ Church in L.A. in the 60s?
I did not, but I have a connection. My favorite uncle was an elder with them, and as a matter of fact, my grandfather on my father's side was one of Bishop Mason's first disciples, and he took Kojic from Memphis to Kansas City in 1896 and opened up the first church up there.
Okay.
So
cool.
I know some of them, and Bishop J.O. Patterson Jr. and I used to go hunting together on frequent occasion until he took sick, along with Reverend Bill Atkins, who was a preacher around here. So, yeah.
Yeah.
If that answers the question indirectly. Yeah, I'm out of here, man. How about gotta go? This has been Judge Joe. Catch me when you can. I'm the one that ran.
All right, Judge. Thank you. Hear me? All right, y'all. We were having issues. Time Q, you just tuning in? We've been on for 3 hours. Yeah, but y'all make sure presidents nominate people to the Supreme Court nominees, but he would have been good to offset Uncle Clarence. But yeah, if y'all loved me for my time, ladies and gentlemen, please drop something in the Cash App if you like. But also make sure you subscribe. I see we got new subscribers from Terry Jones. Make sure you subscribe. Time Q. Soletta, please make sure you subscribe. Please subscribe. Thank you to Local Ken, Tedra, Aeronauts. Subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Fantasmic, I saw you subscribe. Thank you, Torrin Floyd. Thank y'all. Thank you. This has been a dream, guys. I just never knew that you all I knew we could get people to come in, and we got over 1,000 people. Those are some numbers. But make sure, ladies and gentlemen, you subscribe to the channel. We got more coming. This Sunday, I'm going to be interviewing some new people. A brother who's a director, and he's from California. He's going to talk a little bit about his project and also his situation or his thing on the vice president. And we're going to talk about that. Those of you that don't think I'm balanced in this, I know what what J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are doing. They're white boying. They've been doing what they've been doing for years. I know their positions already. Let me put my music on just for a minute. I want us, especially since we vote in block for the Dems, I want some stuff for us. I want to know what you're going to do. I have a business. If I hired an employee and I had an opening and two of them came up, two candidates said, pick me. One candidate is a loudmouth. And then the other candidate, the interviewee I'm going to interview, he says, well, I asked him, well, tell me, do you have any experience with Microsoft Word? And he says, well, not really, but I'm better than the other guy. That doesn't tell me anything. We got to ask something in order to voting is quid pro quo. Every group does that. Bottom line, every group. That's a fact. That's why when I was going back and forth about the reparations thing, somebody said, well, why you focused on a black agenda and not for all Americans? Because I'm a black man. And I'm hearing them talk about other groups and individuals, some of whom don't even have a right to be in this country, a la illegal immigrants. And I'm seeing them get tangibles. So we can ask for tangibles. Don't you be no dummy and say you can't ask for something from these leaders. Hell no. Take control of your lives or somebody else will do it. But ladies and gentlemen, I digress. This has been another great episode. 3 hours and 30 minutes. I think we're going to leave it there. I'm hungry and I'm going to get something to eat. So make sure you smash up the likes, ladies and gentlemen. And I will see y'all in the next one. Be one, be safe, and be blessed. Thank you, Ed Houston. Make sure you subscribe. Ed in Houston. Signal Corps, make sure y'all all subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. You know where we're at. Smash them up. Smash up the video likes. Time Q Celador. Oh, she's cute. Smash up the likes, you sis. If you don't, you a sissified punk who don't deserve my barbecue, bitch. You're like popping fresh doughboy. Smash up the likes. Anyway, be one, be safe, be blessed. Love y'all to death. This is Judge Joe Gavin Brown, Richard, signing off for all you sissified little punks. Good night. Oh, it's time to go oil my guns.